Morning, everybody, and welcome to Teachmeet MFL Icons this morning. We're going to be starting shortly. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes for everyone to join the live stream. So I can see already, I was just about to say in the comments, in the chat, if you want to introduce yourselves, let us know where you're joining from this morning. That would be fantastic.
Yes, hello everybody. We are so happy to have you here, and I think it's very important to interact with each other. So please use the comment, and please tweet as well. And in the in Twitter, that would be absolutely fantastic. And I think the important thing as well is to engage in a conversation and have a lovely time and learn from each other. Definitely. And remember to tweet you got it there #TM MFL, please. That will be really good.
You can also find us on Twitter at TM MFL Icons this morning, and we're streaming live onto the Teachmeet Icons Twitter page, as well as Teachmeet MFL Icons Twitter page as well. So morning everyone. You can see lots of people joining us from lots of different places this morning, which is fantastic. My name's Hannah and I am one of the coordinators for Teachmeet MFL Icons. We're joined organising the tech side of things this morning by our co-coordinator Adam Lamb as well, who is currently off screen because he is running all the technical side of things, and he'll be running all the Twitter and everything this morning, and he'll be presenting later on. And also joining me this morning is Esmeralda as well.
Yes, absolutely. And we are so pleased to have you here. And again, I emphasize, please say hello, where you're from, interact with the people, and ask questions, and just say, you just give opinions. Oh, I thought that was great, or I used this in this particular way. I think that's particularly useful for all of us, and to learn from each other, from our expertise of this wonderful community.
We're also going to have 2 Q&A sessions this morning. We've broken them into 2 sessions where we've invited our presenters whether they'd like to come back on screen for the Q&A sessions. So we'll have one at 5 to 11 and one at 12 o'clock today. So if you'd like to ask any of our presenters a question, please send us a tweet at TM MFL Icons, #TM MFL, and ask any questions that you have. Alternatively, leave a comment in the comment section, and we'll ask our presenters those questions as they come through as well. So I've got my notepad and pen at the ready.
Okay.
And these types of events wouldn't be possible without our wonderful sponsors. We'll be hearing from our fantastic sponsor, Language Nut, later on during the event, and we'll be sharing the fantastic work that they do throughout the event. And we'll have a video showing you, if you don't already use Language Nut, how you could get involved and use that fantastic website as well. But as I say, these events wouldn't be possible without our fantastic sponsors, and we're really lucky to be sponsored by Language Nut. Before we start, I am just going to do a quick announcement of our next event. Our next event will be online on Saturday, the 20th of May, and you can join Esmeralda, myself and Adam live for that next event. I will actually be publicising the sign-up sheet straight after this event this afternoon if you would like to sign up for that. So perhaps during this event, you might think that you'd like to present on a certain topic, and you'll see from throughout this event, there are lots of different voices speaking. We've got some presenters who've presented before, either in person or online, and lots of new voices as well. And that's really important to us at Teachmeet MFL Icons, that we have a good variety of speakers on a variety of topics. So you could choose to present on a teaching resource that you've used recently and that another member of staff could go and use in their classroom in the future. Or you could become a keynote speaker who speaks for approximately 15 minutes on a big idea in MFL teaching. So let's start. It is time to start, and our first presenter is Greg Horton. So I'm just going to bring Greg on screen now. Morning, Greg.
Good morning, everyone. Hi.
Morning.
And I'm sure lots of you know Greg. He is very experienced. He has led lots of local training events and presents at national conferences. Greg is an advanced skills teacher and has over 30 years of classroom experiences, including roles as a lead practitioner and MFL advisor. And Greg is going to talk to us this morning as Learning to Talk and Talking to Learn. So over to you, Greg.
Okay, so technically, to get my slideshow up, what do I have to do? Fantastic. Right. Well, good morning, everyone. And first of all, thank you to MFL Icons, Teachmeet MFL Icons, and Esmeralda for inviting me to do this. And I'm not sure whether I'm an icon. If I'm an icon, then maybe I'll make the sequel to this, where surely we'll all become national treasures. I don't know if that series has been planned yet. Anyway, I'd like to talk to you. It's my usual thing. Obviously, my passion for 33 years has been speaking, getting kids to talk the language. It's what I feel is really the primary aim of all modern language teachers. Okay, and most of us go into the career thinking that is going to be our main point of reference within modern language teaching. I suppose it's always needing reaffirmation. I read something which disappointed me incredibly a couple of months ago on Twitter, where a modern languages teacher actually stated, I think the use of target language is overrated. And that was a statement I just couldn't relate to at all. And I just wondered where that person was coming from on that. And as difficult as it is to achieve on occasions with some classes, I just think it should always be our aim to have as much spoken language circulating in the classroom as possible. So this little session is a reaffirmation of this, and just from my point of view, to try and talk through, particularly in the early stages of language learning, what we might do as teachers to promote more the authentic, spontaneous type of language rather than the other side, which is the routine use of language in the classroom. That's important as well, but I'm going to focus on the other one. So I've just written a few things that came to my mind there about why we speak, why we do this, because obviously there are things that affect it. Okay, there are, what really annoys me actually in MFL is the constant emphasis on feedback within exercise books. And I always say to language teachers, say to your senior leadership teams, no, we should only have half the amount written in books that other subjects might have. We're 50% speaking and listening. Come into the classroom and see the feedback that we give to the spoken and the interactive side of things. That's just so important in the modern languages classroom, and senior leaders really need to get used to that. To be fair to Ofsted, actually, a couple of the Ofsted inspections I've had or suffered, were very much aware of that. And on one famous occasion when I didn't give the books out at all because I hadn't marked them, I actually got away with that because we only did speaking, and the Ofsted inspector had no problems with that. So maybe there is some hope. But at any rate, I think speaking is our USP, isn't it? Okay, when you ask kids, they all say we would like to speak more. Okay, so what I'd like to do is look at particularly the very early stages of language teaching. So the focus on the target language, first of all. I think this is always a big thing, and it will continue to be for language teachers. I trained in 1989, and the heyday of the communicative era. And I remember as a trainee teacher, if I just managed to survive speaking the target language for the whole lesson, it didn't matter if the kids were hanging off the ceiling or doing whatever. I passed with flying colors. Well done. You only spoke German throughout that lesson. Now, obviously, there were some big issues with that approach, but I think in essence, it was an admirable aim, wasn't it, to try and keep as much target language flowing in the classroom as possible. And then as you become older and wiser, you just become a little bit more pragmatic about it. But I don't think pragmatism should ever stop us from doing what is right, which is aspiring to use as much target language as possible, but addressing that depending on the group, the time of day, whether a wasp has flown into the room, whether it was a fight at break time, all the sort of pragmatic elements we need to take into account. So I thought about this long and hard, and I thought, right, how am I going to achieve use of target language effectively in the classroom? And I thought, well, I'm not going to achieve it all lesson long. I know that. And maybe that's not actually desirable for many kids. But what I was convinced in my mind, I just love, when I do use target language and you see the kids not really understanding some of them at the start, and then with your mime, gesture, your ways of are promoting it. You see the little minds working, and you actually think, well, every time target language is used in the classroom, there is so much learning going on within the brains as kids try and decode what's being said. They work with the language, and I just think it's so worthwhile. But I thought to myself, right, what I really want to avoid is that mixing of languages. Now, I don't mean mixing in the sense of taking time out to compare the grammar of one language to another. That's obviously useful as well. But I didn't want that mid-sentence change. And I always feel privileged in my career to have observed a lot of other people's teaching, so very good lessons, but also some points where you reflect on your own practice. And I remember seeing this one lesson in a school in Hampshire, and it was almost like a comedy show, because the kids came in and the teacher, it was a Spanish lesson, and the teacher said, "All right, chicos and chicas, get your cuadernos out." I was thinking, sorry, and it just went on like this all lesson. And at the end, she said, "Well, I suppose it's about tiempo that we guardar our cosas now." And she actually did this. And I thought, the kids have no idea what language is expected at any one time. And I was clear in my mind, what I want to achieve in my lesson is phases of target language. And then I had this idea that I would simply laminate, a piece of card with the UK flag, or whatever we want to call it these days, and the target language flag on one side, and only the target language flag on the other side, and with a bit of blue tack. When my expectation is that we only talk, say in German, I would have that flag showing. And when we were doing things which meant comparing languages or explaining a difficult task, I would be doing that in English, so I would allow both flags to be showing. Now, when Ofsted came, they really liked this. They thought this was a really easy way of creating the kids knowing exactly where they stand. The first time I did it, when I explained it to the class, obviously in English, this was going to be what was happening. A lad called Alex ran up, ripped down the thing off the board and said, "That means you want us to shut up." I said, "Well, that's a fair point, Alex. Yeah, we'll go with that one." But anyway, that's what I've always used for the last 15 years since. And just to create that expectation, that's the language I want us to operate in at the time. And of course, that allows teachers great flexibility. That with a more difficult class where it's not going so well, I could just turn the flag around if that's what I need to do to help the learning progress. Or with a great group who are going great guns with the target language, I could just keep it going. I can create a challenge over a term. How long, what's the longest we've ever sustained in a lesson of surviving in the target language? Because that survival on the desert island is just so important, for really getting those skills going. So I thoroughly recommend that approach to anyone who's thinking about, how much do I use target language? How can I use it? That you have the right to determine at that time, based on what you see in front of you, how long you're going to survive in the target language. And on the internet, by the way, you can find these lovely little gimmicks. And when I didn't use the laminated card, I used to use these. So the cool dude, as I never was, would have them on the top of his head, this meaning I can speak English. But ahora vamos a hablar en español, claro, si me pongo las gafas así. So these can be bought on the internet. Very nice. Quite gimmicky. So that's what I'd like to say in terms of starting out in the target language. Now, other tips for starting out with authentic and spontaneous use of language. And I'm very clear about this, and I have to disagree with a couple of really distinguished colleagues that I've read about on this, who would claim that you cannot expect kids to be spontaneous until they reach a certain level of language. I actually disagree with that. I think that if we want kids to be really spontaneous, we have to start from the word go, with the roots of spontaneity and the basic little touches. And at the end of the day, if a kid just says yes or no to a question that they're not expecting, that's spontaneity in its most basic form. And I think it's really important, to start from the beginning and raise kids in this way. And I think the interesting research that's been done on target language use, there doesn't seem to be much research which says that if kids have this approach from the word go, then what can they become in terms of using the target language? It usually sort of suggests things like, well, you pick up a difficult year 9 class, they're not used to using the target language. Well, you know, I've done that in my career and it's really difficult. But if I've had them from the day one in year 7 and I do this approach, yes, it's possible. So the first point I'm going to make is one thing I've really believed in, and I'm so disappointed that, you know, the new GCSE hasn't addressed this at all. If anything, it's moved away from it. That we know there's 2 different registers in language learning and teaching, and that's writing and that's speaking. And we know, you know, they are different forms of using a language. Unfortunately, if you strip away the pronunciation from most mark schemes, there really is no difference. You know, we expect development, we expect complex use of language. To me, that is writing, where people have got time to think about the language that they're really going to use to incorporate. For me, speaking, okay, what an ideal mark scheme for me has always been something that really, you know, really rewards the interaction, the ability to keep going with somebody, the little linguistic devices that you use. And it's sad that we've never achieved that we look at our mark schemes and say, this is what we should be doing in speaking, and this is what we should be doing in writing. We shouldn't be doing the same thing. So for me, if we go back to day 1, or certainly the October half term with year 7, I really hate it, and I would get really annoyed with my year 7s if I just walked into the room on Monday and said, wie alt bist du to somebody, and they gave me the full sentence answer like ich bin 11 Jahre alt. Okay, they know I wouldn't be impressed, because that really is not authentic language. And sometimes at other sort of training sessions, I've started off by finding out teachers' names by saying to them things like comment vous appelez-vous, comment se llama usted, and I go a few teachers usually with everyone saying my name is, until I get to the person who just says Sam. You think, well, great. All the rest of you have been teaching GCSE languages in the UK for too long, because no one answers the question, what is your name, with my name is. So just a little thing like that, I think. I love self-reflection, and I thought about that in the classroom. I thought, why am I doing this? Because all I'm doing is building in their mind this idea of you answer a question in a full sentence every time, and you don't. If I want them to be ultimately authentic, spontaneous users of a language, I need to develop straight away that consciousness that you don't have to answer a question in a full sentence. Now, some people said to me, they misunderstood me when I first said this and said, oh, well, that's, you know, how are these kids going to survive an exam? How are they going to build sentences, you know? Okay. And I said, well, hold on, you know, this is what I do with speaking. When I deal with writing and the other side of the equation, of course, I'll be teaching them to form sentences, of course, but not within this context of interaction within the classroom. And what this approach also does, of course, it's very inclusive. If you think about a year 7 kid having to do the whole mouthful of, you know, my birthday is on there, okay, this gives them the right to simply say something like Julio as the answer to that question. Okay, so it's actually a very inclusive way of teaching as well. But you can imagine this sort of interaction, if I set this from day 1, then as we go on 5 years later, when they do the GCSE and I'm doing the little follow-up questions that are necessary to get the 5 points for spontaneity, these sort of candidates can have absolutely no problem with throwing in these quick, you know, responses in a conversation. It all goes back to day 1. It's always the same, isn't it? Okay, when heads used to call me into schools and say, I need this situation improved in Key Stage 4, you know, I always say, well, don't look at Key Stage 4. Look at the long-term plan, go back to year 7. You know, what are you doing with year 7? So I'm probably overshooting already. I hope I won't take too long on this presentation. So if we look at the ingredients, I'm saying set the use of target language through the flags. I'm saying let's develop authentic interaction from the word go, where a whole sentence answer isn't necessarily required. I'm also saying, right, opinion and conjecture are ultimately important, that I want to establish straight away a dynamic in the classroom. Now, I've actually missed a word out of here. Okay, what I should have is the German word also, ich denke. So the equivalent would be pues creo que, or alors je pense que. Okay, my French is very poor, by the way. I only teach German and Spanish. Okay, but okay, what I want to establish is kids' ability to say, well, I think this. And, you know, it's really important for me that, although I haven't put it on the slide, to establish straight away that use of the little word alors, pues, also. Okay, and I would take time out with year 7 to allow them, I don't know if you can see me do this, but put their feet on the table, just lean back and say, alors, you know, just take their time, a natural way of prefacing an opinion. And then I want them to give an opinion, and then I want them to be able to hand that opinion to someone else and get the response with the, what do you think? So for me, really early on in year 7, right, well, like, I think this, what do you think? And then within the opinion, I'm going to teach really early 20 transferable opinion adjectives so that anything I might put on the board as a prompt, okay, they'll be able to talk about at a really early stage. Obviously, I'm going to use brand names, but if I think it's a word they might fall up on, I'm going to put the word underneath the visual as well. So I really want my year 7s to be able to say, well, I think this. What do you think? I think this. Now, within this, and obviously, you know, all the guessing games that you might play with year 7, these are really useful phrases within that. And the conjecture as well for me is really important. Okay, and the phrases that go with this. And I think back to, I think it was 2003 in those glory days of Pathfinder. And I had a lovely mission of going in to establish Key Stage 2 languages as in my AST role. And I remember going in and sitting with a year 3 class, and we were just playing Kim's games with pets. And they were quite good. They were sticking in the target language. But one kid said, Ich denke, das ist probably ein Hund. And I thought that's interesting that year 3 in English would say in a guessing game the word probably. And I thought, well, of course they would. And they probably say definitely, and they probably say perhaps. And I thought to myself, is it really that difficult to build in what I would have classed as Key Stage 4 words before? Degrees of certitude, if you want to phrase it in that way. Sounds very grand. I'd say that to an Ofsted inspector. Okay, and we'd have in German vielleicht, and we'd act it out, vielleicht, wahrscheinlich, bestimmt. And I just went in for my next 20-minute session the following week with year 3. I just went in because they always follow me, and I just got them repeating ziemlich, wahrscheinlich, bestimmt. And then we did it with Ich denke, das ist vielleicht eine Katze. And they all followed me. And it was just so really easy to do. And I took that back to the secondary school and immediately built it into our year 7 curriculum where the exchange of conjecture was very important. And within that were the approximation phrases like, you know, más o menos, okay, or etwa in German, that if I'm guessing ages, I can say, I think this person is about. So for me, it was just those little touches, those little devices that we just fit in that just create that sort of authentic and spontaneous use of language very early in the process. Now, the missing piece of the jigsaw for me after that was that if we're getting involved very early on with conjecture and debate and opinion, exchange of opinions and reasons, then that idea of needing to respond in some colloquial way. And again, this was me thinking, this is speaking language, that's written language. I want kids knowing as well that they might use some phrases that young people in the target language would generally use. Okay, and I'm getting too old, so I always have to say to young Germans, they find it a weird question when I go on an exchange, you know, how are you telling someone to get lost at the moment? Okay, that's good. I'll use that one in my next lesson. So I would teach these phrases as response phrases. So when they do their handover of opinions, if somebody doesn't like the opinion or they want to emphatically agree with that opinion, they again have the language ready to spontaneously do that. Okay, and you can imagine that this sort of language will transfer in 5 years' time again to the GCSE speaking test, the conversation, where they just might chuck in phrases like that. Okay, and you know that for me was really important as well. And all of those stages I've just talked through, we can achieve in year 7. Okay, sowing those seeds, if you like, of spontaneity. So when their development is further down the line, okay, they can still be. They've already learnt to be spontaneous. They just reapply it. They usually mentor it with their ability by that stage. So that's my conviction, that we need to offer opportunities for spontaneity and authentic use of language right from the word go. We don't just learn a language and then try and build it in. I don't think that works as well. Okay, so
we've got 1 minute left, Greg.
Okay, right, that's good. So just to take it further, what I really love about working in this way and planning for speaking is that it just makes you consider what it really is, real language that you never taught before. So I went 20 years only teaching, say, me gusta, no me gusta. And I just set up an activity once in Spanish where they were working and exchanging and being spontaneous. But they just, one person said, me gusta el fútbol. Next person said, sí, me gusta el fútbol. No, no me gusta el fútbol. And I suddenly thought, what has happened to that key Spanish phrase, a mí? So we just did a whole lesson working on that dynamic. Because one person says this, a mí también, a mí tampoco. And then we went back to the same conversation. And wow, did it sound so good with them saying, it's that little language device, a mí. So if you've really got speaking at the front of your mind, you think about doing these things. It would be the equivalent. In German, I would do doch, that wonderful word doch. In French, people would do si instead of no when you use that one. And just those wonderful devices that make the kids know they're using language authentically and spontaneously. Okay, so that's what happens basically when you think about speaking the language in those terms, instead of the overall picture, speaking, writing, it's all the same. No, it's not. And we can establish these, develop these learners, nurture them who can use language in this way. Never easy, always a health warning with target language and working in this way, but it can be achieved if we stick with it and we do it from day one. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Greg. That was amazing. And I think hopefully you'll have a bit of a chance now to catch up with all of the comments, because the comment section has been going crazy throughout those 20 minutes of presentation with lots of great ideas. So afterwards it would be great. And I can't actually remember, Greg, apologies if you are joining us at 5 to 11 again. I'm
definitely joining you. I thought we were finishing at 12. I'm sorry. I'm off to a football match later. Southampton, I hate to say. But I will be loving to join you for the session at 5 to 11, the Q&A.
Yeah, if you can, that would be brilliant, because we've got some questions for you as well already coming through, and that would be fantastic.
That would be great. Greg, that was absolutely fantastic. And you created a huge debate online, which is in the comments, which I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Everything makes sense. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And next up is a familiar face. Shahid Wahab has presented before at our Teachmeet MFL Icons events live online, and Shahid is joining us again today, which is fantastic. He works as a head of MFL and the Spanish curriculum writer for a multi-academy trust in London. And today he's going to be speaking to us about seed planting in the MFL curriculum. So over to you, Shahid. Welcome.
Great. Thanks very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Great, perfect. So good morning, everybody. Like Hannah said, part of my job is as a curriculum writer. We're writing a bespoke Key Stage 3 Spanish curriculum that we're rolling out across 7 schools. And so in my work as a curriculum writer, one thing that really concerns me is how we design curricula in order to make sure what we're teaching sticks. That's something that I'm thinking about every single day, is how can we make sure that students are maintaining the knowledge that we're giving them and not just encountering it and forgetting it. And so it was right at the start of writing this curriculum that I came across the idea of seed planting, and it kind of has various different names, but I'm going to talk to you today about kind of my understanding of it and how we put it into practice in our curriculum. So seed planting is essentially the idea of planting seeds of lexical or grammatical structures early on in a curriculum that then kind of grow, if you like, to continue the analogy, as we unpack and build on them a little bit later on in the curriculum. So essentially to emphasize the importance of building really solid foundations, really solid linguistic foundations that we can then kind of leverage a bit later on in the curriculum to go more into depth or to build more complex understanding. And so a good example in our curriculum is how we teach the present tense, how we teach conjugation. People are normally surprised when they come to visit us on how late we leave it. So we don't really touch, well, we don't touch conjugation full stop until the 5th half term of year 7. But we do plant the seeds early. So we, in the first term, focus on describing things, and we have a big focus on adjectival agreement. But as part of that, they encounter the words vivo and vivimos, I live and we live. And we don't go into any depth on it. They just know those 2 words. In term 2, we look at expressing thoughts about sport. So they're doing pienso que, diría que, creo que. Again, 2 more words that have that O ending, and the subject is I, that they're adding to kind of their mental bank. In term 3, we talk to them about opinion verbs, and they encounter me gusta, me gustan, me encanta, me encantan. And here we draw their attention explicitly to me gustan as they please me. We do the dodgy translation thing. And we do that because we want them to associate the N ending there with verbs with the subject they. So we talk to them explicitly about, in Spanish, any verb that ends in an N is third person plural, has a subject they. And we don't go into depth, but we raise their awareness of it there. Term 4, we talk about future structures. So they do what they're going to do on the weekend or next week. And that's a chance for us to embed some infinitives. So again, we haven't touched in conjugation yet, but they've learned 10 infinitives that are regular and highly frequent that are embedded. So that by the time we get to term 5 and we actually start talking about conjugation, I should say we don't teach the full verbal paradigm. We teach them in pairs. So in term 5, we're teaching them first person singular plural. Term 6, we're teaching them third person singular plural. But by the time we get there, they've got 10 really well embedded infinitives that we can leverage to kind of to conjugate. So we're not having to teach that at the same time. They've seen all the patterns, right? So this doesn't feel unfamiliar to them. This feels like familiar territory. And we found that has really helped speed up the process, but has also helped with retention of the endings and how they go about the process of conjugation. If we zoom out a bit more, we do this as well across the whole Key Stage 3 curriculum. So if you take something like the imperfect tense, we teach it in year 9, but they start encountering it right from the start of year 7. And that's not an accident, it's really deliberate. So when we teach I live and we live, we also teach them vivía, I used to live. And we're careful on how we translate it. I used to live. Term 3, they see me gusta, but they also see me gustaba. It used to please me. It used to please me. When we teach suelo and an infinitive, so I tend to and an infinitive in year 8, we teach them solía. We awkwardly translate it as I used to tend to, so that it fits our pattern when we get to year 9 and we talk to them about the imperfect tense, and we say that you can translate it as used to initially. We unpack that in more detail in Key Stage 4, but used to initially, they've seen these regular endings. They've seen the aba and ia endings, and they're really familiar with them, and this feels really natural. Building on the year 7 stuff, they know that the mos ending is for we and the n ending is for they, so they can get to iamos, abamos, ian, aban really, really easily. So we think that there's loads of kind of benefits to this. We know that teachers sometimes concern themselves with what's happening this week, what's happening next week, and doing this forces you to see the bigger picture. Where do I want them to get by the end of the unit, by the end of the term, by the end of the key stage? So seeing the bigger picture is important. And we found that this approach, as opposed to what we used to do, kind of jumping in, teaching it from a blank canvas, has led to kind of more solid knowledge, so kind of more accurate knowledge, but also more durable knowledge. So they're holding on and retaining that knowledge much, much better. So if you think about putting this into practice in your curriculum, what I'd recommend is asking yourself these 3 questions. So think about, where are you headed? What's your end point? What do you want students to know by the end of the unit, term, year, key stage? Then say, what opportunities do I have to expose them to this before I teach it to them? So how can we preempt it in the curriculum? And how am I going to frame this so that it all matches up? So by the time we get there, it's all consistently taught. And then once we've taught it, how are we going to revisit this in other topics? How are we going to look at different parts of the curriculum, revisit the same structures, but in different kind of linguistic themes and all of this, so that it's retained? So those are kind of some brief thoughts on seed planting. We're always keen for people to kind of come and see the curriculum in action. So if you would like to come and visit, you'd be absolutely more than welcome, and do feel free to get in touch. But thanks for listening, and looking forward to the rest of the presentations.
Oh, thank you very much, Shahid. That's amazing. And I think that really gives us some thought of how do we introduce grammar throughout the curriculum. and what are we focusing on. There's lots of questions in the chat as well, so if you do get a chance to have a look and catch up with the comments afterwards, that would be fantastic. I think you are joining us at 5 to 11, aren't you, for the Q&A as well, because I've got a couple of questions for you. So if you do want to stay on in the background on your presenter link, and then I'll just add you back in to the Q&A in a little bit, that would be fantastic. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Shahid. I thought that was very, very useful. And again, a lot of people are agreeing with you how the year sevens can use things like the subjunctive to describe a photo already without knowing the subjunctive itself. So I really back you up 100%. So I thought that was very, very good, very useful.
Perfect. And our next Teachmeet presentation is from Sarah, and Sarah is a new speaker for this event, so welcome, Sarah.
Hi.
If you want to get your slides and everything ready, I think you've got everything ready in the background already, and it is a popular topic at the moment that Sarah is going to be presenting on, which is the ChatGPT resource and how we could use it for students in their work and how students can use it within the classroom as well as teachers. So over to you, Sarah.
Lovely, thank you. Do I just click on my slides?
They're there now.
They're there now.
Magic. Oh, that's worked very smoothly. When I first logged in, my Minicam was on and I had the fright of my life because my head was surrounded by pictures of monkeys and lions because we've been studying Querido Tho in Key Stage 2. Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It was really lovely to be asked. Today, I'm just going to give a really quick 5-minute presentation about using ChatGPT for consolidation, revision, and flipped classroom. Now, just before we start, a quick disclaimer: ChatGPT is for over 18s unless they have express parental consent, because they collect data which can be shared. So I think that's just worth mentioning before we start. But there's my contact details on the slide as well. I think it's chopped off my Twitter handle. Now, also, before I get going, I'm sorry about the amount that I've crammed onto the slides. I thought if I put all the commands on, then if you have the slides, then you have everything that you need. So I know I've gone against everything we've ever learned about a PowerPoint. So first thing I want to talk about, now this was kind of aimed at like an A-level learner. I don't have a lot to do with Key Stage 5 at the moment. I haven't taught it for a while, but this was just an example. I was trying to think of perhaps what older learners could use it for. So they can really tailor their experience on ChatGPT to suit whatever they are doing at the moment. So I have started here. Now you can see my first command was to create a dialogue between two friends in Spanish discussing traditions and customs in Spain for an A-level student and focus on using the imperfect tense. Now this really generated quite a good dialogue, but it wasn't advanced enough. So I wanted it to add a little bit of subjunctive in, and then it rewrote it for me, which obviously the student could translate or try and add to. But then I asked it to create a reading comprehension, but not include the answers. I think that's always important. If you are encouraging students to use it, you can request that it gives you the answers afterwards. So create a reading comprehension, include 10 questions, but don't show me the answers yet. And it did that really, really well.
I've just lost Sarah. Esmeralda, are you able?
I have lost as well. So I was just waiting to see if it was just me. My connection.
No, I was going to say I've lost Sarah. Sarah, are you there?
Sarah?
On screen. I think we've just lost Sarah. I'm just going to give her a couple of minutes to see if she reconnects. I'm just going to try removing her slides and removing her and adding her back in to see if that reconnects.
Back in.
I think she's lost connection there.
Yep.
We've just lost Sarah. So if I've just taken Sarah off the stream and she's just coming back in now. So hopefully Sarah will join us back in a moment.
Yes.
She's just coming back now. Right, that's fine. Yeah, and I'll just mention while we're waiting for Sarah to rejoin there, hopefully it's going to work. As I said at the beginning, don't forget our next event is on the 20th of May. It is going to be an online event again, and our I know lots of you have been asking the questions, when are we going to be back in Manchester for our in-person live event? And it will be in October, and we are very, very excited about that. So unfortunately, we are making you wait a little bit longer, and all the way till October for the start of the new academic year. Sarah, I think you're back with us now. And your connections there, is that working?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, perfect.
perfectly.
We'll just add your slides back in there. I think it was on slide 2 you were on, weren't you?
Yeah, super. Okay.
Perfect. Sorry, Sarah.
Sorry. Of course it wasn't going to go smoothly. Of course it wasn't. Okay, so I was just explaining about, they could generate a dialogue. They can absolutely tailor it to whatever they want it to include, but they have to be probably advanced enough learners that they can error spot. And I will talk to you about that a little bit more why in a moment. And also this worked really great. So generate a list of advanced writing structures in Spanish with examples relating to Spanish culture and traditions. I had my Spanish hat on doing this. And then you can see that it has given me some examples of, for example, using the subjunctive, but also given me some example phrases as well, which I thought was probably going to be very useful for them. Now, this is where I was cramming, because the thought of using just three slides with no animation was filling me with anxiety. So I've gone right over the top. But here are all of my prompts that I was playing around with. You can see there is a huge variety of things that students can use ChatGPT for consolidation, revision, or a flipped classroom. Give me a simple explanation of direct pronouns, indirect pronouns, and prepositional pronouns in Spanish. They can create their own activities. I think there is quite a lot of scope really for teacher and student use to overlap, because there's nothing to say that, the activities that we might use it to put into lessons, they might want to generate them themselves to complete, to give them a bit of variation. So apart from simple explanations of things, they could create a worksheet for themselves about, preterite versus imperfect, grading an essay. If they've got the mark scheme, they can upload their piece of writing, and it will give them kind of an approximation of how they've met the requirements of the mark scheme. I've done that a few times, and that works pretty well. I think that's probably a good way for them to guide their writing. And it can give feedback as well, what else they could add to add additional detail. Creating a revision schedule. That could be in any subject. It doesn't necessarily mean, they could just use it in MFL. Suggest some websites to revise from. Chat with me in Spanish. So it can kind of give you a dialogue in live time, so you can respond to it, and then it will generate responses to your responses. Outline, whatever they're studying in literature, in the style of Spark Notes. So it will give you a really comprehensive kind of overview. Not that I'm suggesting that they shouldn't read the book. Don't do that. Don't be me. Don't be that student. Explaining the difference between, grammar points, key phrases in Spanish. I'm a GCSE student, include the imperfect tense. So it's really however they want to use it. The world is their oyster, but I did ask ChatGPT to talk to me about apocupation, and it fully lied to me. It told me that casa is a masculine noun, and then it apologized and we moved on. But I wonder actually if it now has learned from that, because I know that it's kind of constantly evolving. So I don't think it would say that to me again now that I've corrected it. But there's huge scope there, I think, for student use. And rather than banning it, I think that we probably need to teach them to use it responsibly, because we know that from the absolute horrible things that we get generated from Google Translate, Google Translate is good for one thing, and I will encourage them to use it for if they wanted to check the pronunciation of a word, but not for generation of language. So I think we just need to make sure that they're using it appropriately, but not using it for generating language if they're not advanced enough probably to error spot. Okay, well, that's me done. And thank you to the other two speakers as well. That was an extremely tough act to follow. And I'm sorry if I've just waffled through those, but I hope that if you've not used ChatGPT before and you want to use it, that you've got some ideas there about how your students can use it too.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much, Sarah, and apologies for the technical issues you had there. There's a couple of comments coming through there about the slides, because obviously they are quite difficult to read when we're on screen. Just something that I haven't mentioned, and I should have mentioned at the beginning, we will be uploading everybody's slides as a PDF to the TES page at the end. So Esmeralda will be uploading those for us later this weekend. So
Yes.
you will be able to see those and have a copy of those. All of our presenters have given their consent for those to be added when they signed up to present, so we can add those as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. That was so useful, and it's been lovely to hear you again. Yes, it's the second time I hear you in the webinar, so that's fantastic. I think there's a lot of potentials for teachers with ChatGPT. I am really excited about it.
Jerome's just added a comment that the sound's not very good. Can everyone hear me okay?
I can hear you perfectly, Hannah, so I don't know if he's... Yes,
hopefully this is going to work and we're not having technical issues. I'm going to add Jerome to the stream. What do I say to introduce Jerome Noakes? I don't know where to start, really. Jerome has presented at several of our events in the past, which has been fantastic. He is very well known within the MFL community from the competitions that he's ran, and I think we were all very sad to hear when he wasn't running the poetry competition this year. He is head of MFL, and I think he might be having some technical issues because it's
I think he's having some technical issues. Okay, so that which is why you got the thinking.
That might be.
So
we might need to remove that for a minute. I'm going to give Jerome a couple of minutes because I know Jerome is teaching this morning, and I'm not sure if it's a technical issue from his side there, and that's why he can't hear my sound either. I'm just checking the comments to make sure everyone can still hear me. I'm just going to go straight to talking about our sponsors. As I said at the beginning of the event, these events would not be possible for free without our wonderful sponsors. We are so lucky to have Language Nut on board for this live event, and we are very grateful to them for sponsoring our events. As you can see at the bottom of the screen there, the website for Language Nut is there, and I am just going to add a video now and play you a short video from Language Nut about the wonderful resources that they have created. So hopefully this works.
Hello everyone at MFL Icons, we're really glad that you could attend. My name is Zoe and I am a former teacher of French and German, and I'm now head of content at Language Nuts. Before the next session, I'd really like to tell you a little bit about our resources and how they can support you and your students in the classroom with language learning.
Language Nut is a time-saving teaching resource that helps MFL teachers to plan, deliver and assess high-quality lessons and homework in a timely and effective manner. Let's take a look at how our platform can make a measurable impact in your school. In addition to 25 primary languages, the platform supports 6 secondary languages, the 5 you can see on screen, as well as Arabic, through Key Stages 3 and 4. All of our languages align with every major exam board for GCSEs, the International Baccalaureate and the Scottish National 5. Language Nut's assignments section allows you to set work for your students quickly and efficiently with inbuilt submission deadlines. Assignments can involve any exercise across the 4 key language skills, and you can see the estimated time it will take your students to complete the tasks. Once the assignment has been completed, it will be automatically marked with a breakdown of every student's results visible in the assignments library. They're automatically saved so students can be reassigned work if there's room for improvement. As well as assigning homework, Language Nut is a great tool for setting assessments to be completed in class. From weekly vocab tests to end-of-term exams, you can shape assessments to your specifications in just a few clicks. Like homework assignments, these are marked automatically, which saves valuable lesson time. The assignments feature also allows you to upload custom content, allowing these assessments to fit any scheme of work. Language Nut Secondary is an excellent tool for preparing your class for formal examinations, with an extensive library of over 8,000 exam-style questions, spanning foundation and higher levels for secondary students of all ages. Custom content can also be added to this section to fit your scheme of work. Students of all abilities can practice these exam skills on individual devices, in one-off exercises, or as part of an assignment you built. Results can be tracked in the admin dashboard to give you a solid idea of where your class is excelling or struggling. If you're unable to attend school for any reason or are handing over your class to a different colleague, our lesson planning tools mean your students don't have to miss a beat. All you need to do is share the assignments, homework and exercises you have planned with the person covering you, and they can seamlessly pick up where you left off, ensuring your missed lessons are still meaningful and can go beyond revision. And assignments are easy to set in just a few clicks, so even if you're feeling unwell, it shouldn't take you too long to set your cover. For a more immersive learning experience, you can use our new range of printable exercises alongside the platform exercises. All of our vocab modules have their own range of printables, so you'll never be short on activities. Like the assignments feature, you'll be able to upload your own custom content to use with these templates. Students thrive when they're stimulated, and these resources are a great way of getting everyone involved. In addition to all of this, we offer wraparound care in and out of term time for all our teachers. You can email my colleague Daniel using the details on screen if you're interested in trying LanguageNut in your classroom or if you have any questions. Thanks very much for listening.
Perfect, and hopefully everyone was able to hear that video from LanguageNut. Again, we are very, very grateful to LanguageNut for sponsoring our event today, and we hope if anyone has any queries about LanguageNut, please contact LanguageNut directly. And if you do have any questions, send them to LanguageNut. And please remember, if you are signing up, to mention that you heard about LanguageNut from our event today. I'm going to try adding Jerome again. He says he is in the waiting room and ready to go, but my screen is still loading. Esmeralda, is your screen
Yes,
still
my
loading?
one is the same. That's what I said to him, that I can see he's logged on. I can see he's there, but I couldn't see his image, which was telling me that something is not right.
Yeah, I'm just.
Shall I try? Because there are two logins. I'm gonna try the other one.
Just try the other version just to see.
No.
Nope, I don't think that's going to work, is it? While we're just trying to get Jerome on screen, Connor, I believe you are ready to go. Connor, can we go straight to your Teachmeet presentation, if that's okay with you? And bring you on there. Thank you. Right, I'm just bringing Connor on screen. Thank you very much, Connor, for that. Connor, again, has presented at one of our events before, haven't you, Connor? Which was fantastic. So going over to Connor O'Boyle, who is going to be talking about demystifying, pronunciation. Connor is head of French, and we are very lucky to have him with us and talking about phonics, which is a key issue that is being discussed a lot within the MFL community at the moment, given the new GCSE as well. So Connor, over to you.
Welcome, Connor.
Oh, there's no sound at my end. Esmeralda, can you hear sound?
No, I cannot hear him either. Oh my God, what's happening today? Can you? No sound.
No,
definitely not muted.
No, I can't hear anything as well. Connor, could you try logging out and logging back in for me, please? I'll remove Connor's slides as well. There, I don't know what's going on there this morning. Hopefully that will work.
Because he was definitely there.
Connor was there and I could see Connor. So hopefully that will log back in now. I'll just give Connor a moment to log back in. There. Hopefully that's there. He's coming back in now. So hopefully, let me just add in. Connor, can you? No, we still can't hear you.
Something with your audio setting.
Have you got your microphone? Your microphone's not muted, so it might be something to do with your audio settings on your computer.
They're definitely not muted. It's something to do. Sorry about this, guys, but remember that the 20th of May, we are back online, and in October, we're having our face-to-face event. So if you're thinking of presenting any ideas, it doesn't have to be anything really big. As you can see, it can be something just 5 minutes is ideal. Just, let us get in touch with us. There will be a form coming in this week.
I've actually just been a little bit naughty there and just popped the form into the comment section.
Oh, brilliant.
I've just shared that. It was ready to go and I wasn't going to share it until the end. But while we're just trying to overcome these technical issues, I just thought it would be a good idea to share that. You've got a couple of minutes to possibly think about whether you would like to present. I'm going to try adding Connor's slides again. Connor, can we
hear you now? Can you try to speak? No, we cannot hear you.
No, we can't. Connor, could you try restarting your computer again to see if that would work? I know we can see you trying to talk to us, but it's not working there. I am just going to.
We
no,
try.
they're there. Greg and Shahid, are you there for us to bring you in for a bit of a Q&A at the moment?
Yes, I think
that would be brilliant.
there,
If you are. I know.
Shahid, you're there. Greg, are you
Greg,
there?
you're there. Yeah. I just bring
Brilliant.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry,
let's
Greg.
do that.
Oh, sorry, Greg. Keep muting you there. That would be brilliant. If we just go to the Q&A with the two of you for starters. I know there's been lots of comments and lots of questions. I found it quite difficult to keep track of the questions. And Adam is in the background doing the technical side of things there at the moment as well. So, Shahid, this question that's come through for you from Laura. Laura, I think from my understanding of your question, doesn't start teaching languages until year 9. So how would you pack everything into 1 year if you aren't through year 9? What would you do in that situation?
Yeah, I think it's a problem that lots of languages teachers face, isn't it? Restricted curriculum time is something that people are battling everywhere. I think for me, it's not about cramming it into 1 year. It's thinking about how can we, everything that I do in curriculum writing is driven by communication. So each term we have a communicative function. What do I want them to be able to communicate this term? Strip it back down to what do you want them to be able to communicate by the end of year 9, right? And then think about the shortest path to get there, the path of least resistance. Don't worry about things like unpacking whole verbal paradigms or them getting everything absolutely perfect, and view that bit of Key Stage 3, the year 9 that you've got, and Key Stage 4 as kind of a whole process. Because if you're teaching a certain tense and you're worried about fitting it into year 9, there's no need to fit it into year 9. You could teach them some words that are going to give them some communicacy and then unpack the tense in year 10 or in year 11. So I think I'd view it longer term and zoom out a little bit, but tricky.
Brilliant. Have you noticed, Shahid, that when you do this, like when they come to GCSE, for example, are they better equipped? Do you notice a difference or when you never used to adopt this approach?
Yeah, so we really rally against kind of backwash from GCSE at Key Stage 3. So we kind of ignore the fact that GCSE is a thing.
Yes, I know, but as a consequence, it's like add on.
100%. I think if you came to see our year 7s could give you a GCSE writing text at a 7 or an 8 level, so when they get to there, actually we can focus on the things that are really interesting and the things that are really kind of tricky. We can talk to them about the subjunctive. We can talk to them about indirect object pronouns and these kind of things, because communicatively the foundations are there, and they will all, like those tricky things, they will have examples of those that we've planted the seed of that we can unpack. So our year 7s will use ojalá fuera, but we won't touch the subjunctive in the imperfect until year 11.
Of course. Yeah, that's brilliant. And Greg, a little bit of the same question for you. When you adopt this interactional, language, things like that, what are the benefits that you notice straight away when they come into year 10 and year 11?
Well, I mean, this obviously the surviving. So if I had to take an extreme example, we're talking about kids who never do homework, for example, and there's this issue about this rote learning of GCSE conversation answers. Whereas we know you don't actually have to do that to get the marks that you require, at any rate, in terms of how many clauses are needed. But what about the kids who aren't prepared to play that game, at any rate, even if you end down that route of learning these paragraphs? If they've been sort of raised on that approach, what I've found with those sort of middle kids, particularly lazy boys, if you like, if I'm being stereotypical, that they can just sit there and I can say to them, how easy is languages? You rock up, you have a 10-minute chat, and there's 25% of your marks. So you can actually rely on the kids to sustain a conversation and get a decent mark without any revision at all. So I'd say
that's amazing.
Ultimately, with those sort of lazy students.
Absolutely. Were there any more questions, Hannah?
I think the other comment that was really interesting was actually from Vincent, who's going to be presenting shortly. Vincent's commented on Twitter, taking your quote of tiempo, get your cuadernos out. Thinking about that, it can be a very effective way of learning words. Is it harmful, or is it part of the process of sliding into the target language?
Well, I mean, I'm just pleased for the debate. I love debate. And if it's inspired people just to think about the role of target language, and everyone has their own approach. I'm not dogmatic about it. I suppose the only point I was making, I've got nothing wrong with the mix of languages in the sense, not the casual mix, but the purposeful strategic mix. That's fine. But I just like those patches in lessons, those phases when the kids just know, right, you are only going to work in a target language, because then your mind will expand itself to be able to cope with that. So I don't want to sound too dogmatic about it. It's not that I think that's quite funny as well, that get out your cuadernos bit. I was actually laughing when I heard it. So but if it's inspired people to have a bit of debate about it, that's what we want these days. And sometimes I find some of our national organisations like to stifle debate at the moment, don't they?
Yeah. Someone also commented, Greg, that at the moment some of the schools with their workings that they need to show all the time written evidence by the ASL team, and then obviously, well, it's a pity, because actually I agree with you, and I think Shahid, you were talking about the same thing. The important thing is about communication, isn't it? And sometimes communication could be written communication, but most likely I think it's got more value when it's oral communication. How do you get around that?
Well, I wasn't joking when I mentioned the Ofsted inspector, and I think it's one of those occasions.
Fantastic, as you say, let's hope.
Without trying to get political about it, it's one of those things, well, school politics, where SLTs use it as a mechanism, don't they, to pressurise staff or to achieve what they want. But actually, Ofsted aren't asking. Ofsted are looking to see, progress in language learning.
I agree.
Okay? And so people need to be careful, and they need to question SLT and ask them that logical question, that if 50% of our exam is made up of listening and speaking, why would you be expecting that amount of written work in a book? Come into the lesson and see it happening there. I really think we need to stand our ground on that, because they don't have an answer to that point. Some of them say, oh, is that the case? Yes, it is, actually,
Yeah. I think you're right, and I think as well that I always say, that when you look at language books, they may not be so full, and there is a reason why that's the case. And I think we need to re-educate sometimes the ASL teams in schools, and trying to to get to understand what is a language about. It's not just about worksheet after worksheet. After all, Shahid, do you do when you do your approach of seed planting, do you also, obviously you plan beforehand what structure you're going to get in, do the children come up with anything they would like to say and then you add it to the repertoire, or it's just something, how does it work?
So I think that's down to, so a centralized curriculum is a tricky thing anyway. So all 7 of our schools teach this same kind of scheme of work with the same resources, and their job then is to plan to make it impactful for their children. And one of the ways that they can adapt that to their context is, what are our children wanting to communicate? Interestingly, one of the things that we found on this curriculum is we've sequenced the functions in a way that we think they're naturally acquired. So we thought hard about the order, and the kids just get to the point where they're going like, how do you say I like? And we can say, oh, we're doing that next term because it's genuinely coming up next term, and we can give them a sneak preview. So we have tweaked the order as we've gone through this slightly, the order of the curriculum to the rhythms of what students want to be communicating. But equally, we wouldn't go as far as taking bits out and putting bits in on the fly based on like a couple of students that want to be able to say this word. We might just give it.
Yes, I think that's absolutely fine. And
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, both of you, for joining us, and thank you for answering those questions. It's been fantastic to have that interactive conversation with both of you there, which is a new thing that we're trialing for this event. So thank you very much for doing that for us this morning.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been fantastic. And you create a lot of debate, which I think, in a good way, which is, I think, what it's all about, and reflection.
So, yeah, moving on then. I can see Connor is waiting. He's on a new device, so I'm hoping this is going to work. And Connor, I'm going to add you in. Can we hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes,
Working. Perfect. Connor, over to you.
Yeah, great. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. Seemed to be working on my end, but we got there in the end. Thank you for asking me to speak. It's I've been to a few Teach Meets before, and always great to share some ideas and get some new ideas. I'd just like to talk very, very briefly about something we've brought in our department this year to help our pupils with pronunciation in French, thinking about, well, obviously it's important in general to be able to say things correctly in French, but we had an eye as well on the new GCSE and reading aloud or however that'll end up looking. And we've done something recently which has been really, really successful, especially compared to what we used to do. And I'll talk about that first. I don't know if this is familiar to anybody else. I've sort of up until this year, in terms of pronunciation, I'm going to focus mostly on French because, as you can see, that's my role. And also, I think French is the language where pronunciation is a little bit more difficult compared to German and Spanish. But hopefully, if you mostly teach German or Spanish, you can sort of apply this if you need to that. But up until this year, I sort of had an approach which wasn't really very successful, to be honest, where we might at some point have a phonics lesson where we go through, all the pronunciation of lots of different sounds and fly through lots of different ways of saying lots of different parts of French. Letters at the end are usually silent, and H is usually silent, and OI is pronounced wa, and so on, and E with an accent is pronounced A, and we would keep going, and then you would teach them all that, and then you'd have the classic issue where then the next lesson or later on in the curriculum, it would be like you'd never mentioned it at all. Pupils hadn't taken anything in. Or the other approach, you might go the other way, where you just sort of, you come across at some stage, je dois, or devoir, or even toi, or moi, and you sort of do phonics incidentally and say, oh, by the way, this OI is pronounced wa, and it's sort of not very structured, not very well planned out. So we started to do something this year, and I call it phonétique de la semaine. And so with all of our classes, we've actually done this. We actually do this at the moment from year 7 to 11 because all of the year groups, their pronunciation, there's sort of room for improvement. So we do it right up to year 11 at the moment. But what we do, as you can probably work out from the meaning, is we just take a sound and we have a look at the sound every week, and that sound is tied in to the topic that we're doing. So, for example, you can see there an example of a slide with on in the middle, and we've done that. As you can see, the examples are entend and gentil. Also, some other examples they might have seen before, like sans, but it's tied into what we're doing. So we did on when we were talking about relationships and je m'entends bien avec ma mère car elle est gentille, and so on. And we do, you can see there at the top right, some other examples. So we do WAP and we do numbers because that fits in with trois. We do silent final consonant right at the start because that's quite important, and it ties in with salut and pas and things like that. And we do I when we do birthdays because it ties into lots of months, janvier, février, and also anniversaire. And so, like I say, what I did in my game time last year was I just had a look through every topic we were teaching, and I just thought of one sound at a time to focus on that ties into that topic. And so we do our starter, we do our do now, whatever you call it, our first activity, and then we have after we do that, I show them the slide that you can see, the phonétique de la semaine slide. I model the pronunciation of entend or gentil sans, and then we do a little bit of practice with some words with the sounds in it. You can see the slide that says c'est correct, where we go where it has encore, tant, entre, and so on, and that I might do some activities like I say the word and they repeat it if it's correct. They don't repeat it if it's wrong. And we might move on then. Like I say, we do one sound every week, so it's not just one per lesson. The next lesson, we usually have 2 lessons per week. So the first lesson, we introduce the sound. The second lesson, just for retention, we recap it. And you can see the à ton tour slide, where then the pupils have a chance to say that word that looks like center, that you might be able to see, I know it's quite small, or the word that looks like dent at the start of dentist. And that's where we get the English word. How are we going to say that in French? Because we're not going to say center, we're not going to say dent. We're gonna think of how we say the en, and the pupils love having a go at trying to say it correctly. And the à ton tour slide, they that's for them obviously to have a go at how to say it in French. So just very briefly, the reasoning behind it and why I think it's worked so well is, as I said at the start, I think before sometimes pupils, if you try and teach all the sounds at the same time, pupils have got a bit overwhelmed. What we know about working memory, they're not going to be able to remember all the different sounds which might be different to the English. One sound at a time allows them to practice it, internalize it, link it to words they've already met. So you can see that bit where I've talked about the schema where they, because they're practicing with on at the same time as they're practicing the words je m'entends bien, and they're saying that over and over again, or they're practicing with wa whenever they're saying toi quite a lot. They're linking it to something they already know rather than it just being an abstract. This oi is pronounced completely differently to what you might think. I might link it as well to when I do oi. I've spoken about that quite a lot, but I think it's quite a good example. I might say, how do we pronounce Courtois, the footballer? What does that sound like? And they can sort of link it to what they already know. And what we found then overall this year is it's really built their confidence with how to say words in French. They're really keen to do the à ton tour bit where they're saying, where they're practicing the words. They're really keen to have a go saying the words correctly in French. They are they're building up the rules together. So, for example, the word don't that you can see it, like I know it's quite small, but you can see the word don't at the bottom. They're able to combine the en with also the final consonant. So they're not even saying don't. They're saying don't without the t, and they're combining lots of sounds together. They're building their confidence. They're saying words correctly, and I'm getting very, very little, almost no. If I can't remember the last time I had, which I used to have all the time, I don't know how to say it. I'm not getting. I was thinking yesterday. I can't remember the last time I've heard je suis and je dois. We're getting je suis, we're getting je dois, and from year 7 right up to year 11, their pronunciation is absolutely fantastic. It's really, really accurate, and the pupils are gaining lots of confidence. And so I suppose that brings us back to the start, where it's really demystified pronunciation. It's not a guessing game. It's not a mystery. They know what they're doing, and they can say it really accurately. So thank you for listening. You can see my contact details I've put down there at the bottom left if you'd like to ask me any questions or if you'd like to know any more. But thanks for listening, and I'll pass back to Hannah and Esmeralda for the next speaker.
Oh, thank you very much, Connor. That was fantastic, and apologies for the technical issues that we had before. I think we're just running into a few technical issues at the moment, but that was really interesting. For me personally, our department are currently focusing on phonics and pronunciation, and we've been using the numbers 1 to 12 because most of the key phonics come up in both languages, for both French and Spanish, in those numbers, and then we've got a key phrase and they're displayed around our whiteboards, and then we can refer back to it. And it's like what you say there about using something that they know and that deliberate practice, and referring back to it and bringing it back to that point and what's familiar to them already. So that's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. But just to say that I'm here, but for some reason, I don't know what today is, like all the things are going wrong. My camera has just decided, I don't know why, it's just switched off itself. I don't know why, but I'm still here, Hannah.
Oh, no, that's fine. Oh, thank you very much, Connor. Over to Vincent. I think Vincent is our next keynote speaker.
Sorry.
Vincent's our next keynote speaker. So I'm over to Vincent. Vincent, if you can just get your slides ready. I know we're having some technical issues this morning. I think if you click present and then slides, they are there. Perfect. So that is working. So over to Vincent. I think Vincent's very well known within the MFL community. He teaches in a comprehensive school in Norfolk. He is an author and a blogger and a member of the ALL. And I'll hand over to you, Vincent, talking about developing narration.
Right. Well, hopefully, as well as the slides and the microphone and the video, hopefully my voice is working, because I've been sitting in silence, listening to everybody and trying to tweet at the same time. So yeah, like Greg said, the whole icon thing is a bit intimidating, but the Teachmeet, we're all just teachers, and I am just presenting some stuff that I do in my classroom. I'm not going to put a lot of context, so you can take what you like or relate it to your context, about developing narration at Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. So here we go. Here is a story. Some of you might be watching on your phones. This might be too small. It says in Spanish, I like to go to the aquarium because I can see the fish, but I don't like to touch the crabs. My brother likes to touch the starfish. So when we went to the aquarium, I said, I want to touch the fish. No, he said, not me, I wouldn't. He said, I want to touch the fish. He was touching a crab and I was taking photos, and unfortunately, I dropped my camera in the water and I cried. So that's the kind of narration that this is year 9. Year 9 beginners, they start year 9. They start Spanish in year 9, having done French. But I bet you do the language in here. I bet you do I like and but, because my brother likes. I bet you do fui and fuimos for I went. I bet you do I want. You might not do the imperfect because, as we've seen, people tend to use that for used to. Used to is very useful for A level. Spain used to be a country where, and talking about how things used to be, for me, for this thing of narration, it's useful for saying what was happening. I was taking a photo. What's next? When I dropped my camera. So we're going to look at a little bit how we can do this with year 9 and maybe a bit about how it helps them with the accumulation of learning, but that might be for another day. So what's this? This is looking down on a desk in my classroom, those blue things at the bottom of the chairs, those blue chairs we have. And the teacher, that's me, has written on the desk for when the pupils come in. One pupil's got me gusta, the next one's got porque puedo, so it's I like, because I can. And these phrases are going to stick with these pupils in these positions where they sit on the seating plan. So this pupil is always going to be the go-to pupil for me gusta is I like. And then the person next to them going around in the sequences, you always follow that up with a reason, because I can. Or it could be I don't like because I have to. Depends a bit on how many pupils you've got in your class. You might have to give them one phrase between 2. Okay. Well, let's have a look. This is one side of the classroom. So something like I like because I can, or it could be I don't like because I have to or because I can't. Especially if, to give some more detail, if you give an if, you always give the opposite if. If I can go with my friends, blah, blah, blah. But if I can go with have to go with my family, I prefer, okay. If it is sunny, I love to, but if it rains, I prefer. And then my brother likes, well, it doesn't have to be my brother likes, it can be anybody likes, but that's setting up a difference of opinion, a bit of conflict. And then this is on the other side of the classroom, physically on the other side, because this is one paragraph, or this is one part of the answer, if it's spoken, and this is where we move on into the past. So I wanted to do something, but my brother, doesn't have to be brother, wanted to do something else. Bit of conversation. I said something, he said something. What did you decide to do? Probably actually you go with the thing the other person wanted to do, so you can be a bit of disappointment, conflict. This is the thing with narration. Apparently for a narrative, for a story, something has to go wrong. There has to be some jeopardy. So you end up doing the thing the other person wanted to do, say what was happening, what happened, and then the last person I would have preferred. So that'll make a lot more sense. We go back here. So that's on the desks around the class. And that's on my whiteboard. Again, this is just a teacher. This is just a photo from my board. So to go to the aquarium, to see the fish, to touch the starfish, to take photos, to drop my mobile, and to cry. Those are the things that, and you can instantly see the story. You can see it's going to be someone wanting to go to the aquarium, someone wanting to see the fish, someone wanting to touch the things in the touch tank. They were taking photos, they dropped their mobile, it all ended badly. So you go around the classroom and you can just tell the story. In fact, the pupils can say the me gusta and the teacher can fill in the ir al acuario words. Or you can get each pupil in turn to say their bit and make their sentence and go around the class. And then you can go around again and do the my granny went to market. You know, my granny went to market and she bought some tomatoes. My granny went to market and she bought some cucumbers. No, you have to say tomatoes and cucumbers. My granny I was too busy concentrating on the fact that there aren't any tomatoes or cucumbers. Anyway, my granny went to market and she bought some tomatoes and some cucumbers and a pepper. Okay. So this would work with the first person says, I like to go to the aquarium. The second person would say, I like to go to the aquarium because I can see the fish. And the third person would say, I like to go to the aquarium because I can see the fish, especially if it's rainy. And the next person would say, they would add their bit. Okay. If we go back and look at the story all the way back, you can see that's exactly what we got. The whole story of I like and why, what happened, what was happening, what happened. You can do this. You can have it on the board, but then rub out all the core phrases. So this might be the following lesson when the pupils have remembered the story, but have they remembered the language? So their pupils are putting back in. So it says, go to the aquarium. Someone's got to say, I like to go to the aquarium. And the next person's got to say, because I can see the fish. And they can always come back to the pupil who owns that structure that was originally written on their desk. One of my year 11s told me off this week because I asked someone else the ending for the imperfect. He said, that was mine. That was on my table. In year 9, that was mine. And they always remember it. And also in the exam, they can mentally think their way around the classroom, how to tell a story. We always start with I like, because I can. We always do 2 ifs. I suppose you're not physically meant to look around in the exam hall and see the other pupils and think of their expression, but you could. So this is putting back in the core of I like to go to the aquarium because I can. And then you could do the opposite. When they put that back in, rub out all the aquarium words, just leaving the I like, and they have to remember I like to go to the aquarium. All sorts of things like this. These are just things from last week's lesson that I did. Then next lesson, you can put this up to go to a theme park, to ride on the rides, eat loads of sweets and drink too much fizzy pop, and to throw up. And you can see immediately it's going to go, I like to go to the theme park because I can go on the rides, especially if it's sunny, because if it rains, I like to go to aforementioned aquarium. My brother likes to eat too many sweets and drink fizzy pop. Swap to the other side of the classroom. We went to the theme park. Okay, you see what's going to happen. So they're using the same template. Now, if you're worried about it being too much of a template, the thing is it matches the GCSE criteria. Opinions, reasons, developing a narrative. It definitely uses the word narrate. Now, lots of people take that just to mean mention the past, mention what happened. But this is my year 10. My year 10 are a funny mixture of people who did Spanish in year 9, people who've picked it up in year 10, and people who speak maybe Portuguese. So they're all different levels. But this is when they've done, we start with holidays and they re-pick up the year 9 thing with the whole going to the beach, going to the theme park, going to the aquarium. They get really good at it. And then they hit the topic of school. So I like sciences because I can work with Alice. You can see this is exactly the same. I like because I can. I like sciences because I can talk with Alice, especially if we work together. But if I have to work with Vincent, don't know who that is, I prefer to work in silence. Unfortunately, Vincent likes working with me. Swap to the other side of the classroom. Unfortunately, oh, sorry, no, missed that bit. Past tense. I went to science. I wanted to work with Alice. Alice didn't want to work with me. I was working in silence, but Vincent was talking and their teacher told me off. I would have preferred to work with Alice. So it's exactly the same formula. This is moving away from it. This is the same group. This is when they come in with stories. I like my brother's girlfriend, but I don't like it when she comes in my bedroom and uses my makeup. And then what she said and what happened. I called my mum to hide my makeup. We've been doing ser and estar, so there's a little bit there added on. Yes, I've got time to do this. So this is year 9, writing on the tables. So previously, I put the infinitives on the board for theme park or for aquarium. This lesson, they chose their infinitives. They wrote, oops, sorry, 2 slides. They wrote them on the table in felt tip, and then they physically went through to start off with which ones are going to be what was happening and which ones are what happened, and they conjugated them on the table. So they're physically rubbing off the AR ending, ER ending, IR ending, and putting on the correct ending, using verb tables if they have to. And then they write the story on the table. And why write on the table? Well, it changes the dynamic. It's not something perfect that's in your book. It's a process you're going through. You're getting the verbs, you're changing the endings, you're constructing the sentence. It's an enjoyable process of writing and creating something. This is a whole story they wrote about going to a waterfall, and predictably someone fell in. You can see that just from the infinitives. To take photos, to have a picnic, to fall, to cry. You can see from, Now, this is when it gets to the point where pupils can use it for real. This lesson wasn't meant to happen. This is my year 10, last thing on a Thursday. I could see from the register that this pupil had missed her register mark the lesson before, and she came in and went, story time. Never guessed what just happened. I was in the toilets, right? I was helping this younger pupil, and then the teachers were outside, and they said I was smoking. So I was in a good mood. I was in we've been doing Ser and Estar, so we put it all on the board. I was in the loos at lunchtime. I was looking after a younger pupil who was very sad. 2 teachers arrived. We went out and the teachers said, you're in the wrong toilets. And they accused us of smoking. They took us to the head teacher's office. We have 2 head teachers. That's not a mistake. They looked in my bag and in my coat. They didn't find anything apart from my lighter. So we're doing this, we're constructing this together, but they're supplying all the structures and I supply some words like lighter. They shouted at me and I cried. And again, every verb, we get the infinitive and they do the ending. So I decided, which is a good way of cheating to use the past, I decided to go back to the bathroom and not go to my next lesson because I was fed up. We've been doing Ser and Estar, but I did go to Spanish. And we did carry on and do a bit more on how this person made the wrong decision and they probably made the situation worse when they should have just said, yeah, fair enough, I'm in the wrong loos. But by that time, the head of year had appeared and taken them out. So yes, that's developing narration from year 9, how I do it, and a little bit so you can see where it goes. I don't know how I'm doing for time because we didn't start at the program's time, so I've just talked until someone's told me to stop. But
that's perfect, Vincent. Your perfect timing there. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. And if you do have chance, there's lots of comments in the comment section online as well. Lots of debate about writing on the tables as well, and how easy it is to remove the whiteboard pen from the tables as well, and some tips of how you can do that. And it's brilliant. And just how effective that is. I think I'm right in saying, Vincent, that you're available to join us at 12 o'clock, aren't we, for the Q&A?
Will it be 12 o'clock? Do you think it'll be 12 o'clock or is there?
It may be about 10 past 12
now
because we're running about 10 minutes behind, if that's okay with you still, because I have got a question for you written on a post-it note there. So if you could join back, that would be brilliant.
Excellent.
That would be great. Yeah, I just want to say, Vincent, that was absolutely fantastic. And this is what I call a craft. You know, I had to be a teacher craft and the old-fashioned way as well, which is just with the board and the pen, which is someone also, I think it was Lucy, actually, also was commenting on the comments. So it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Vincent. And I just want to mention, and I mentioned a few times, but remembering about today's event would not be possible without Language Nut. So I am just going to put Language Nut details and how to access the Language Nut website if you do want to have a look into that and how you use it further. I don't know if anyone does use Language Nut and you want to share that information in the comment section and how you use it and how you are finding Language Nut if you are using it. I'm going to hand over to Esmeralda for the next part of today's event, and Esmeralda's going to present for our other presenters. Thank you very much, Esmeralda.
Yes, absolute pleasure. And I hope we don't have any more technical issues, especially when my screen was also going. But yes, it's such a pleasure to introduce Margarita. Margarita is super, is a prolific teacher. And she's been, at the moment, is head of the Spanish at St. Peter's Catholic School, and was also an A-level AQ examiner. And she was also teaching at university. And this is very impressive, but she has actually run 17 exchanges to Spain, which is wow. And she's going to be talking about her exchange experience. So thank you so much, Margarita. There you are. You can start. Can we hear you, Margarita? Have you lost connectivity?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now, but you are frozen on the screen on your camera.
Oh, just going to.
We cannot hear you.
Can you see the slide?
Yep, can see the slide. Can hear you now.
It's just frozen.
Oh, okay.
It's like it cuts off. It's cutting off, Margarita. So maybe it would be better if she rejoins. What do you think, Hannah? She just rejoins.
Margarita, can you just try speaking for a minute for me just to see if it comes through?
Just going to tell you a little bit.
Margarita, we can't
Are
hear
you
you there.
okay?
Can you leave and rejoin, please?
Yes, we'll see if we can rejoin. Sorry about these technical issues. I don't know what's happening today.
I
but-
know Jennifer is ready to go. I think I can see her slides, and I know she was ready a little bit
Yes, shall we
ago
do that?
to help us. Jennifer, I don't know if you're still there. Margarita, if you can just leave the studio, please, and rejoin, because we've lost you on video and sound there.
Jennifer, are you there at the moment? Yes,
Jennifer,
you are.
are you there?
Are
If
you
we
happy?
Jennifer, can we hear you okay?
Can you do some talking for us just to make sure that it's working? Oh, can you hear us, Jenny? Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, it's working. Perfect.
Oh,
Jennifer, are you okay to go ahead and present now if we bring up your slides? I know
Of course, yeah.
Is that fine? Oh, thank you very much. Esmeralda, I'll let you introduce Jennifer.
yes, well, Jennifer, again, is another Titan today, another icon like everybody who's here. And she's an assistant head teacher in charge of teaching and learning and CPT in her school, but she also teaches French and Spanish. And she's a very experienced speaker and who has contributed to a lot of conferences like the Language Show and the Linguiscope conference. And it's always a pleasure to hear Jenny. So off you go.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone. So my 5 minutes today is just to give you some ideas to practice dictation. It's nothing new, and I'm sure it's things that you all already do, but maybe it might just be some refreshers. So you all already do. Okay, so just to start, the first idea. So as you can see, I've got 8 words on the board, all hidden, and I'm using the most recent phonics, and I get the pupils to write what I'm saying. So as you can see, the first word is bleu. So I've put the list on the side so you can see the word. So here we were recapping some of the phonics that I've taught my class. And then for feedback later on, what I just do is also I ask the pupils to say those words back to me, just so I can check the pronunciation, but also I can also ask them to spell it, and obviously using the French alphabet. The second idea is a very easy one. So all my classes, they use all the time their mini whiteboard and their marker pen. So here what I do, I might just say a sentence in the target language, and what the pupils will have to do is just to write the English and translate what I'm saying. Okay, so when I then check what they've written and checked with them that it's correct, then what I ask the class to do is to look at the English and to put it back in the target language. So obviously they've listened to me saying it in the target language, they have translated it into English, and then looking at the English, they need to put it back in the target language. So it's just another way, to practice. The third activity that I wanted to share with you is the moving dictation. I don't know if it's an activity that some of you are doing, but here it's very easy. So you split your class in small groups, so small groups of 3 or 4, and each pupil got again a mini whiteboard and a marker pen. You as a teacher, you start dictating, reading a text, but you only first read the first sentence. So everyone in the group write the first sentence on their mini whiteboard, and then after you've said the first sentence, the pupil swap the mini whiteboard with the person next to them, and then you read the next sentence that they write again in the target language, and then again with the third one and the fourth one. And then I collect loads of boards, I put them onto the visualizer, and then we have a look at, obviously the spelling, who can read the text again out loud, and so on. So it's something that works quite well. Then this activity. So for this activity, as you can see, there's a short text on the slide with 7 gaps. So before we do anything with that, what I'm going to ask the class is to predict and to prepare some ideas of what they could put for number 1, for number 2, for number 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7. So here they know that for number 1, they need to put a name. For number 2, it will be, a name, a noun, if you want, as well. Then number 3, they need to use a country. Number 4, it needs to be a country again. Number 5, it's a place. Number 6 is a positive opinion, and number 7 is a negative opinion. So they will just predict what they think I'm going to say. When they've got that in front of them, then I will start reading out the text, and then they will fill in the blanks with what I'm saying. But then at the end, we just look, okay, who got what I said? And it's also a nice way for them to think about the words that we could use in those gaps, because there's loads of different possible answers. And sometimes then I'll also use all the pupils just to share and do it the other way around. So they will read their text and the others, will have to complete. So a very easy one to do. Then the last 2 ideas that I wanted to share with you. So idea 5, the information gap dictation. So the pupils will work with the person next to them. They both have a sentence. It's exactly the same sentence, but the gaps are in different places. And the pupils, what they have to do is just to read the words to the person next to them, and to complete it. It's really important when you do this activity that the pupils hide kind of, their book, because, I know, like, for example, I also do this activity with year 9s, and what they want to do is just to put the piece of paper in front of them and just to, look at the person next to them and not really listening to what is being said. So make sure that you do that beforehand, but that works really well. And then the idea number 6, it's something that I've only started to do recently, and that is linked with my own experience, because obviously, I'm French. I went to a French school. I only moved to the UK 13 years ago, but obviously all my educational system was in France. And in primary school in France, every week you have an autodicté. So autodicté is a self kind of dictation where your teacher will give you a few sentences for you to learn at home, to practice. And then back in class the week after, the teacher will just read what you should have learned and you'll have to write it. But the aim is really to try to not make any spelling mistakes. So I thought, well, it's a great idea to start doing here as well. So I've started to do it with my year 7 Spanish, and it's working really, really well, because again, it's not only like helping the pupils to listen and write what you're saying, but also, it does help with the spelling, obviously, of the words, because they've got a bit of time to learn it. But then I've had some pupils in my year 7 class who said to me, Miss, actually, I've learned it by heart. Can I just say it to you? Which is also really nice. So it was just like 6 very easy ideas to use for dictation. And obviously, there will be something that maybe you can take away. But this is my Twitter, this is my email address, and I know that the slides will be shared as well. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. That was absolutely fantastic. As always, you always deliver. And there were lovely comments there about how they love your ideas, and it's really simple ideas as well to be incorporated, especially thinking about the new GCSE where we need to do dictation as well as part of the exam. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Right. So shall we try now, trying to get Margarita back? There you are. Can you talk to us to make sure the sound is working?
Hello.
Is perfect. Perfect.
Can you hear me now? Brilliant.
Yes.
Okay. That's great.
Perfectly.
So I just want to make a start really quickly. Thank you. If you can hear me well, everyone okay? Okay, right. So I just really want to say the photo there, it was actually to inspire everyone to go on exchanges. This photo was in Granada. It's Federico García Lorca, and it's actually in a restaurant where he used to meet up with his other colleagues and writers and filmmakers in a tertulia, which is a Spanish typical sort of kind of gathering for artists. Okay. So I've been doing 17 exchanges, and you can actually see my, one of them is, well, the latest one is being in Granada. So Granada is, for me, one of the most beautiful cities in Spain, and maybe possibly in the world. And the reason why we done Granada this time is because, although I'm from Sevilla, the school that we actually done the exchange with, they are actually from Granada. So I moved to my recent school 4 years ago, and they already had this exchange with Granada. So what I have done is, obviously during the COVID, we couldn't go. But what I have done is adapted, the exchange that they had, and make it my own. So it used to be with year 10s, but I think the year 10s are quite young to do exchanges. So this year I actually organized it with year 12s, which I think is what I have done in the past. And I think the year 12s is the right age, because they are more appreciative of being in the country. They want to learn, they want to speak, they want to practice. So it's great for them. So this is just a couple of pictures to show you how beautiful Granada is. It's one of the most romantic places in the world, together with the Taj Mahal. And of course, I mean, Anna convinced, exchange organizer, teacher, because I done 17 of them. But the reasons why to do exchanges, in my opinions, are there. So obviously, total language immersion. They're going to be with the families. It's not just a hotel. So they're going to be having to be house-based with families, Spanish families. The cultural awareness is tremendous, from the food to the sort of the kind of buildings that they're going to see, the houses, the school. They're going to be doing lots of trips. The friendship is, for me, one of the strongest aspects of an exchange, because sometimes you make friends for life. I mean, I know some of my old students who tell me that they're still in touch with their exchanges. So I'm very, very pleased about that. Of course, these days with the cost of living being so high, some school, I mean, my school is a comprehensive school, so it's not a private sort of a rich school. So some of the children, they have got a problem, or parents have got a problem with the budget. So making an exchange, it makes it makes the trips accessible for everyone. So that means that you're not actually just having exchanges with people who can afford it. And then, of course, the fact that we are actually with the Spanish families in the evenings, it means that they can actually, you can have a little bit of a breather as a teacher at night. Whereas if you go with in a hotel or in a school where they organize sort of trips, holiday trips, or sort of educational trips, it is very intensive for the teachers, because you have to be there 24 hours for 5 days. The other things that I wanted to share with you is that if we go to the next slide, sorry, I don't know what's it's not going. Yes. So one of the reasons, or one of the issues I have found this year, which is different to other years since COVID. First of all, the cost of the airline tickets has gone up by at least £100 per person. So you have to budget it that. The other thing is I have found a real fear and almost an attitude of, not wanting to go to anyone's houses. Even year 12s and 13s that in the past, in my experience, they've always been very adventurous. They've been very reluctant. So in my school, we nearly didn't do the exchange. We nearly didn't do it because we didn't have enough numbers of year 12s, because obviously year 12 classes that you don't have so many students, and you need to have 10 to make it viable. So basically what I did in the last minute is really, I offer it to the year 11s. So I did a combined, this year is the first time I done it. I done a combined trip with year 12 and year 11s. The other issue that is quite important.
Yeah, losing you a little bit there,
Margarita, we've lost you on the sound
you
element.
are going to have.
Okay, try again.
You will have to actually do a form to which is called Evolve, which is a lot heavy, paperwork heavy, really. One of the things that is very important as well is that this is new this year, so I'm just telling everyone, this is actually a new thing that not many teachers know. From now on, if you're working in a comprehensive school, not an independent school, the parents in England will have to be DVS. So this is actually, for me, was a little bit of a shock, because I thought, well, this is actually going to put some parents off taking part on the exchanges. So, I mean, and also extra cost, more time consuming. But I mean, I suppose if the parents don't mind, that's, I'm just telling you all the obstacles I've been having this year, really. And of course, all these take a lot of time, because you have to organize all the bookings and get everything organized, all the activities. We went for 5 days. So we did 3 days, we did activities, and 2 days they were with the parents. It was a weekend. Okay. So how do we overcome, sorry, could you click the next slide? How do we overcome all the issues? Our solutions was, as I mentioned, we joined the year 11s and year 12s together. I created Padlets with videos beforehand to encourage them to get motivated, to get to know the Spanish school, to get to know the kids. Thanks to Esmeralda, because Esmeralda gave me the idea. So thank you, Esmeralda. And it was really, really good, because they didn't feel so frightened. If you actually create a friendship, if you create a connection, they already feel a bit more relaxed. Also, as I said, it was an established school that we already had an exchange with. One of the things I did is we normally organize it in the way that the teacher in Spain, she will actually organize the trips. Like, she will book all the tickets for our trips, because that is, if you live abroad. So she did all the bookings of the activities in Spain, and I do the same when they come over in June. So I will book Brighton, the pavilion. We go to the London Eye. We go to Hampton Court. The other thing I recommend is to use BA or EasyJet, although I'm not on commission with them. Recommend to use a group booking, because the idea of the group booking is that you can actually and then pay the deposit 7 weeks after you do the booking. So that gives you time to collect the deposit money. And then the other thing that is very useful is that you don't need to enter the final names and passport numbers until around sort of 7 weeks before you fly. So in a case that you have a student that falls ill, or someone change their mind, you can actually have a new student. So you can actually enter the names 7 weeks before you fly. That's very useful. Also very useful is to have a parents meeting where you have the parents on board. I created a group chat. We also had a Twitter group while we were in Spain. So we put all the photos. We informed the parents about everything we were doing. And also, as I said, very important that you also match the students really well. So talk to the teacher in Spain so there are not any issues. Health issues, very important. They need to know everything about the student, including any fears if they're worried about something. It's not just that, it's not that dietary things. The other thing I did this year, and I thought it was very useful, is that I created a booklet with activities using a chat GTP. And it was great, because I created activities for La Alhambra, I created for La Cuevas de Nerja, and AI actually created all the activities really well. And even I gave them a questionnaire at the end to evaluate the trip. And that was very useful. Finally, I created a little card that they'll carry with them with all the phone numbers, useful phone numbers in Spain, police, hospital, my contact details, and also a couple of key sentences in case they were lost, like estoy perdido, ayúdame, necesito ayuda, that sort of thing. And that was really useful as well. One thing I was going to say as well, if you don't really have time to do any exchanges, or, because it's very time consuming, there are organizations like Global School Alliance that will do it for you as well. So that's really important. But overall, if you just click the next one, please. Overall, you could see by the pictures, we had an excellent time. It's been an absolute success. They're all so motivated. We're looking forward to them coming in June. And I will continue doing exchanges for as long as I can, because I'm a great believer that is the best way. Even though it is time consuming, we have many obstacles. I really believe in them. Okay. Sorry that my voice is a bit croaky. I've been having a cold.
Margarita, that was absolutely fantastic and amazing. And yes, very good. And I agree. I think the best thing to do is exchanges. They are invaluable. They are a little bit of a pain to organize sometimes, okay, because of the paperwork.
Yeah.
But you forget everything when you see the children communicating live with the students. So
absolutely. I mean,
yeah. And once you do them once,
even
paperwork that you can use.
Yeah, even I had 2 students who were very nervous and they didn't want to go. I really literally pushed them, and they were having a well of a time, and they're now smile all the time. They seem more confident even in England.
Exactly. That is absolutely. Thank you very much, Margarita. And you can stay later for the question and answer period. That will be absolutely fine. Well, our next thing, we got a keynote. So we got one of our own. Adam is going to be our keynote, but he's not here at the moment.
No, I think we've lost Adam at the moment.
Lost Adam.
I think we've lost Adam, our own coordinator. I don't know how we've lost him there.
I know.
He was in the comments section a minute ago, and he was
yes.
Was he next? So Lucy, I can. He's saying he's here, but Adam, we can't see you on screen in the studio.
Oh, Adam, yes, we cannot hear you in the waiting room, Adam. So maybe you need to.
I don't know if you're on the different link, maybe, Adam. I can see Lucy's waiting. Lucy, are you ready?
Yeah. Would you be happy?
Yeah, Lucy, if you just click present, then slides, and upload your slides for us, please. You are on screen now. Hopefully your sound's working as well.
Yep. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can hear you perfectly. All right, so let's do Lucy. Very excited to introduce Lucy, especially because she's head of German, and I think it's great because sometimes German is a little bit underrepresented, and I'm very happy to have her here. She's a head of German who loves delivering CPD and believes in languages for all, which is so important. And she has presented before in the National MFL Conference, World of Languages as well. So a very keen and enthusiastic speaker. Off you go.
Thank you so much for having me. And really, this has been a delight to just tap in on a Saturday to some really formative CPD, and kind of just building on a couple of key words that I heard from the presentations: the unique selling point of languages, the incremental build in language fluency, making it very inclusive, and developing that degree of certainty in pupils, I think is really vital, and hopefully is something that I will affirm today in my presentation. I'll be talking about facilitating independent reading for all levels of confidence. Now, that word confidence can mean a myriad of things, but if we sort of look at the boxed in student, so to speak, the student may be boxed in a languages classroom because of a doubt in their literacy abilities, because of a doubt in their language confidence, in their language proficiency, in their attitudes towards what's being studied at that moment. But I do believe that what I'm hoping to present today will show that with an increase of a sense of autonomy and that toolkit that really empowers, or to put it in sort of more academic research speak, makes pupils more self-determined, we actually can turn the boxed-in student into a student that feels like a superhero. So we know from reading, when we teach it as a skill, if we know the ultimate goal is to succeed in the reading GCSE or another similar public examination, that sometimes the formatting can be really unfriendly to levels of student, and that could even be to a student that's very proficient and quite literarily confident. So on the left there, you see a better font than some fonts used in an exam, but it's still really tightly packed together. It's not extremely clear from the formatting that this is actually a literary text. So to help turn the critical student into one that feels like a superhero, we might then reformat it. So what I tend to do is box it, which is very friendly to SEN students, and then number each sentence and put them on separate lines and double space them. It just makes it look a little bit more approachable and far more friendly to access. So that's the first step of empowerment. The second step of empowerment is to actually probe the students' thinking and really get them to feel like they got to grips with the narrative. Again, an exam-based question will, I think, it doesn't really encourage students to expand their scope of comprehension or encourage them to interrogate the text. So we have four or five multiple choice questions, which may be in the target language, maybe not, but because the student will likely have looked at the boxed in exam question, as you saw on the left here, they will skim it once, kind of quite surface level, and then go straight to the questions without having really extracted the meaning. So the phrases that I always use with people is make the text your friend, really make sure it's like your buddy, get to know its the ins and outs and its personality. What is it actually trying to say to you? If it were your friend, what would they be trying to communicate in terms of key messages? So what I then created was a more of an inquiry-based questioning ladder. And I formatted this in a resource that you'll see on the left there. So once I've formatted the text and pasted it on the left-hand side, we then have what is called a ladder of inquiry-based questioning. Now, normally, it's a bit counterintuitive. We have a ladder going from bottom to top. But again, to make sure that the first key step for all learners is clearly visible, I put it at the top of the ladder. And at the top, you have a question which asks students to underline and highlight all of the words that they recognize. This may not be necessarily joining units of language together to create full meaning. It's more just as they read, oh, and I recognize c'était, gris, jour, pluie, scolaire, etc. Once they have a text that looks a bit more visually friendly because they've brought a bit of color to it, then they take a further step to actually summarize what can they elicit meaning from meaning in its whole. And what I ask my students to do is to put the numbers on the left or right hand side of the margin or anywhere where there's sufficient space, and actually put the numbers according to the number of sentences they have in the text. And then what they'll do is look at the words that they recognize and write out in English anything that they can understand, either the word in singular meaning or combined meaning with what else is in the sentence. From there, they have the steps and I think the means to be able to infer logically what might be going on in the sentence as a whole or in the narrative as a whole. However, you might have students who might need to break down the text further with more scaffolding. So in the next step, I ask them to find nouns, verbs, adjectives, connectives, opinions. And again, through probing, questioning, and perhaps maybe some teacher modeling, they'll understand what those units of language mean. For those who are perhaps more inquisitive as pupils, who are more confident with the language at hand, you then have steps lower down to get them to now do more with the text. So they might, based on what they understand, infer meaning from words they didn't know before. You might ask them to decode the meaning of 3 full sentences. Or for those who are really flexible with language use and more proficient, you get them to try and actually use the text as a means of production. So you ask them to reword parts of the text using synonyms, different word order, or perhaps even different pronouns. They may go so far as to create their own reading question based on the comprehension of that text. This, I feel, has been a really flexible reading aid for all levels of pupils. I developed it last year, and with every reading text we now tackle, I basically use this as a template. Students are very used to it, and it means that as soon as I give it out, it almost minimizes the amount of instruction that I have to give to guide them. They might go, right, I know that I need to start at the top here because this is a topic I'm not that familiar with. For some, they're like, actually, for a pretty good overview of what's going on, I can start lower down the ladder. Please do note that this will vary from context to context, from pupil to pupil. A pupil's prior knowledge in one topic may not serve them as well for a different context or a different unit. So they may need to start at different points of the ladder depending on the task. I'm just posting into the comments here what's on the QR code there, which is a shared Google Drive folder with this template, plus an annotated example that you can look at to see how this is actually put into practice and how you might then further your training with these receptive skills for your students. I hope that's been useful, and I'm really looking forward to hearing Adam's keynote and to staying on for a bit of Q&A later on.
That is absolutely fantastic. Love that. And so important, you know, with reading and the scaffolding. Absolutely fantastic. May I just say as well that our question and answers period will be now at 12:15 instead of at 12 o'clock. Okay, so a little bit later. We just right now a little bit late because of some of these technical issues. Thank you so much, Lucy. That is absolutely fantastic. And we will go now to Adam. And I think Adam is, yes, you are there. That is absolutely fantastic. Adam is our next keynote speaker. He's obviously one of the coordinators as well of Teachmeet MFL Icons. And probably everybody knows Adam. He's head of faculty for French, Spanish, Turkish, Latin, and classic. So, you know, like, wow. He's a former Holy School lead practitioner and literacy coordinator, and he loves running. I think we know that because we, you know, got all your tweets about running. So following on Lucy's presentation, Adam is going to talk to us about reading and his research. Off to you.
First of all, I do apologise. I was told that I looked a bit like death warmed up this morning when we met before this, so I do apologise. I got quite violently struck down with norovirus last night, so we'll get through that. So what I want to do today is present some research, informed mostly by my Charter College Inquiry Practitioner module, that made me look at a class I was teaching following COVID in the run-up to the GCSE exams and look at how I could make some gains. And a lot of that was done through bottoms up or bottom up reading and top down reading, and looking at the difference between the two and some strategies I could use to help students better decode in the run-up to that exam. So how it all came about, I'm quite a data-driven person. I think it goes with the school that I work at, and I do love a bit of numbers. I love my words, but I do also love numbers. And when I was comparing performance of students on the high tier Spanish examination across all components of 2019 for AQA centres, students tend to perform 10% better on speaking and writing papers. So you're looking at about 74% and 75% correct, respectively, when compared to the reading paper, which drops down to 64%, which you can see in that graph there. And when looking at the foundation Spanish exam in 2019, that gap actually widens quite significantly. So what I wanted to do was I actually had a look at my own centre as well in comparison to the national trends, and we were no different. So I wanted to have a look at different reading strategies that might be effective for improving reading skills in the second language. So that led me on to the December mocks. So we do our mocks in December in 2021. And when I had a look at the results, the year 11 class that were following that had done these exams, my class completely mirrored the trends that were seen in 2019. And there's a clear deficit on the reading paper when compared to the other exam components. My class was 21% down compared to 21% lower compared to the writing and the speaking and the listening. So it was quite significant, and it led me just to really want to seek out some strategies. So following the mock exam, I wanted to see how my class approached the reading texts. And when I was looking just in my own observation, when I was circulating during some reading activities, I found that my students could locate an answer in the text. They knew where it was. If I asked them to get a highlighter and like, right, where's the answer to that question, they would highlight the right bit. And that's using something called top-down reading strategy, which I'm going to talk about a bit later on. That builds on their own experiences and the prior knowledge, but they just didn't extract enough detail for their answers to gain credit in the written response questions. and they weren't able to piece together all the lexical and morphological detail to the right amount of detail in the mark scheme, which cost them marks essentially. So I wanted to ascertain if training these students explicitly in bottom-up reading strategies, so looking at things such as morphology, how we break down words into different bits, looking at word families, connecting unfamiliar vocabulary to the surrounding context, how that could help students more successfully decode the meaning of vocabulary in sentences and extract more relevant detail in their written answers, yielding improvement, hopefully, in the GCSE reading paper scores that took place in 2022. So when we look at reading processes, there's two different levels at which students often read if you look at the reading. You've got what we class as top-down, which is looking at prior knowledge, and you've got bottom, which is processing individual word parts, even on a phonemic level, if you look at some of the reading. A classic example, I think, is taken from this London Overground timetable. I seem to spend most of my time looking at timetables, getting places around London because I can't drive. Well, I can't drive, I just can't down here. And what we do is when we look at that timetable, we actually bring together a series of background information, background context to inform where we're going to look to decide which train it is we're going to use. So for instance, I'm traveling from Hackney Downs, I'm going to London Liverpool Street. The first thing that does is it informs me that I need to read along the Hackney Downs line. So if I go to London Fields, that timing's all going to be wrong. So there's a bit of background kind of context that is informing how I'm reading. If I get Hackney Downs at 8:19, for instance, I also know that the 8:18 is leaving far too early, and I'm definitely not going to be looking at 6 o'clock in the morning. So that top-down process and that bringing in prior knowledge, bringing in my experience is informing how I'm reading that text. And when students read a text, they often bring their prior knowledge to it in order to gain understanding and to locate answers, as my class were. On the flip side, bottom-up processing takes into account individual words. And it's often going from letter to sound to word to eventually create meaning. So it's basically going from part to whole. And if we look, for instance, a lot of Slavonic languages are very, very kind of work in this way. So if we look at that, I can break that up and work out its meaning by knowing some background context. If I know that at is the marker of an infinitive, I know that that is going to be to do something. I know from my prior knowledge that cheat is often a marker of reading. So citat, it's got something to do with to read. Now the prefix da often indicates up to. So kind of run all of that together, those individual clues, da, citat, what I get is to read up to a certain point. So that's the premise of bottom-up reading. And to help with the process of bottom-up reading, which is what my students really needed to improve and really work on in order to decode all the information for those written answers and get every last bit of information out or get past that unknown word that was getting in the way of them getting the marks, I looked at some reading, and the first person I looked at was Alex Quigley. I also had a look at some stuff like Conti as well and other researchers. Conti suggests that in terms of bottom reading, he really places importance on vocabulary building activities that pre-teach vocabulary before a main task, as this lessens the cognitive load during reading. Walter agrees, and Walter also states that the most common and useful words in the language should be explored regularly, along with various ways of recording vocabulary. Now, Conti, when he looks at activities, promotes the value of metalinguistic tasks as well, such as asking students to identify parts of speech, so actually engage with the words, and this can aid students in selecting the correct word through morphological analysis. And that's basically what Quigley also does as well. It backs that argument up. Quigley has his 7 strategies for exploring unfamiliar vocabulary, which are on the screen there. Those, I would argue, are one of the cornerstone things that have really changed my teaching of reading. And I know Quigley is often used in English, but he's also really, really applicable to our subject area. So please, please do have a look at his stuff. I think it's incredible research. Now, more specifically, Walter argues that time should be spent looking at and explicitly teaching the most common prefixes and suffixes of words. So, for instance, if we take the verb viajar, any verb in the AR, any AR verb in Spanish, for instance, viajar, you're going to have a clash between viajo, I travel, and viajó, he, she, or traveled. So if students don't know that difference between that marker of viajó without an accent being the first person present tense and the accent on the O being the marker of the preterite tense third person singular, the students are not going to be able to decode that properly, and they're probably going to get the wrong translation to English when they come to write their answer. So That kind of looking at prefixes and suffixes also formed a real big part of what I was going to do in order to get that class and bridge that gap in the reading. So the intervention itself. What I did first was we did a lot of do now activities, a lot of starter activities, and what actually happened was the students actually it turned into a bit of a guessing game, and they absolutely loved it. What I clocked was the class I was teaching was a set 4 of 9. You had some lazy but clever boys in there, and what I realized was that these lazy and clever boys actually really loved maths. So being able to look at common prefixes and suffixes, I actually really taught them explicitly, first of all, what these common prefixes and suffixes meant. And we revisited so that knowledge stuck. And I also asked them to give some examples. So that was the first stage. The second stage, which the mathematical brained boys absolutely loved, and it turned into a real big game, was I gave them some really random words, such as socialista, frustrante. I think I even put something, I can't remember what else I put on, ferreteria, down for them to see if they could decode it. And it became a real game of who could break their kind of, it was almost like a quiz show. It was brilliant. And it was asking them to really explicitly pick apart the common suffixes and talk about, if you look at the extension task on there, talk about how the different parts come together to form that meaning. So get them to really metacognitively reflect on what they were doing as well by breaking down and decoding that information. In terms of tenses, any of you that teach AQA know that they are particularly stringent on tense usage and getting it right, especially in speaking and writing. And a lot of the time students were messing up their verbs when they were given a written answer in English. They were using the wrong tense, the wrong time frame, and therefore losing marks. So they got the meaning of the verb, they just weren't decoding it properly. So I got out the old verbal dominoes, which I hadn't used since my training, some 10 years ago, or something like that. And what I did was I put a twist on it. In this case, you can see on the screen, what I've done is I've really looked at using the same verb, so using ser, but using different forms of the verb ser, getting them to really, really engage with, right, será, it will be, getting them to engage with the different forms, comimos, comemos, comeré. So really, really getting them to look at those inflectional forms and get them to think about. And again, that kind of element of sticking a timer on the board just took away a little bit of, it split their attention essentially, being like, oh, we're too obsessed by the time and we want to get this right. It turned into a real big game. And it was really, really useful. And it also really helped them to engage with what it was that was in front of them and how that is related to English. So that's going to be incredibly useful for the translation as well. In terms of bottom-up reading as well, this full strategy, I created some sentences with a specifically targeted unknown word for students to figure out. So, for instance, what I did was I put the word in red, so recordar, and they had the rest of the sentence. So, getting them to look at what's around it and getting them to obviously engage with the morphology, trying to break it down. Thinking about record is to do with, like, if you record something, you've got a memory there. Looking at the av, that is the plural marker of the imperative. Sandwiching that together along with the context to create that meaning as well. And what was really useful is when you question students on this is asking them, right, so how did you get at that? And getting them to elicit that as well, that metacognitive kind of thinking. How are you thinking of that through? What's getting you there? So in terms of measuring the impact as well, I think the measuring the impact was really important because I wanted to see if it actually worked. So what I did was I used a bit of quantitative data and I used a bit of qualitative. So the first thing I looked at was the comparison of change in the overall performance in the GCSE reading paper from mock exam to the final GCSE exam between the group that I was teaching at this moment in time that were receiving this intervention and between the same group in 2009. So exactly the same set 4 of 9 that didn't receive the intervention. So I wanted to have a look at kind of who made the most progress. And obviously having the same group, it lended itself to having a bit of a control group as well. So we did that. Also had a look at the comparison between the correct percentage correct scored on the higher tier reading paper and the mock exam and the percentage correct scored in the summer 22 exams. So using tools that exam boards give to you, such as it used to be called enhanced results analysis, to really, really delve deep and to see, right, this is the numbers, this is how they've done, this is how they've progressed. So that was really, really useful as well. I also looked as well at in terms of looking at the written response questions, I broke those down in particular as well, really focusing on those, because it was those that the students were struggling at. It was those that the bottom-up strategies would really manifestate themselves in, as well as the translation. And also I got students to put together, complete some questionnaires as well, just to see how they perceived it as well, because obviously students are not numbers, even though a lot of exam boards would like to think that, and a lot of schools would like to think that, but obviously seeing what they thought of it, were they buying into it, and did they find it useful? So here's some graphs of the impact of the interventions. So if you have a look at the first one, what we had was we had a higher rate of improvement between the reading mock exam in December and the actual GCSE exam. And that rate of improvement was higher for the actual cohort that received the intervention. So that was really noticeable. In terms of the written response questions as well, there was an 18% improvement between December and the final exam for those students that had received the intervention. So it was it looked to me that this was definitely having an impact on that group. In terms of the student perceptions and how they were perceiving it, there was the boys particularly loved it. They just found it a bit of a game, and they wanted to decode, and it became a huge competition, and a really, really nerdy competition, but a really fun one as well for me as a linguist to wade in on. So some of those quotes, and I think those elicit what I wanted it to do. So for instance, you could use later on when faced with a similar word that is unknown. So knowing that cross-transferability of the skills. Students also suggesting that it didn't just help them in the reading, but it also helped them in the listening as well. They could use that. Students really looking at engaging with those markers, and just that last one on motivation really stood out. I gave up on Spanish reading a Spanish word I didn't know. However, now I'm able to figure out a lot more, which also helped my confidence. And that's what I wanted to give them, rather than going at that reading exam thinking, oh no, I can't revise for it, or oh no, it's the reading exam, it's going to be ridiculously hard. We haven't got the luxury of science where it starts off easy, it's a kind of a steady slope up to the hardest question at the end. You might start off with an absolute stinker in the reading exam, and I made an explicit point of telling them that as well. But bearing with it and using these strategies should help them as well. So in terms of moving forward, in terms of what it's taught me, I'm teaching explicitly bottom-up reading strategies again this year. Slightly different. I've got a top set this year for a change. I usually get the middle sets or the naughty sets, but I've got a top set this year. And I'm also using it with a really low set as well, who are, Spanish might be one of the few GCSEs that they actually get. So foundation group, really, really foundation. And I'm doing it with both of them. And again, I'm seeing that kind of confidence in them moving up. And with the top set as well, giving them a few past year level papers as well, just to have a little crack at. They are using those strategies there. So I'm routinely teaching bottom up strategies in our lessons, as well as doing our activities or starter activities. I also really advocate starting teaching these strategies at an earlier stage. One of the students actually mentioned that we wish we knew this earlier, because it would really bolster our reading. And also make a real point of telling the students that these strategies also do work for English as well. I think that's the key thing. If you look at Quigley's research, you look at Connie's research, Walter, Liu, etc., what we're essentially doing as language teachers is we are teaching literacy, basic literacy, albeit in a foreign language, up till A level, and therefore this must have an impact as well on students in English. So I will leave that there for now. I didn't manage to throw up, so I'm quite happy.
That was fantastic, Adam. I think you agree as well. And I think it's just really, really good, and how you can adopt research evidence into the classroom in a very simple way. Well, I know you did a lot of study, but it was really, really approachable, and things that everybody could use like from tomorrow. So thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Very, very good. So
I think we are ready for our Q&A session. So I'm just going to try adding everybody that's back in the studio, and hopefully we're not going to have any issues. Connor, are you there? Yes, you are there. That's fine. I was going to say, I wasn't sure if you were there or not. I think I've added everybody. Have I added everybody? Yeah, I think so. I've just put a tweet out on MFL icons. If you have got any questions, I've just put a tweet out for more questions on there. If you comment on that link, that'll be really helpful. Or in the comment section here, we're joined back by Vincent, Connor, Margarita and Lucy. So if you've got any questions for them, just send them, as I say, either in the comments. I know some people, there's a bit of chat on Twitter there, that some people have had issues on the comments. So I have got the Teachmeet MFL icons Twitter open in the background here. So if you do comment on that stream, that would be really helpful as well, to keep them all in one place and hopefully I don't miss anything. First question is actually from Lucy for Vincent. So Vincent, how do you encourage those who feel they don't have enough language, so to speak, or say they don't know how to say something, even with providing such effective scaffolding?
Yeah, I saw the question. Thanks, Lucy. I think that's precisely what this is part of, that there's that cognitive load of thinking up something to say. And they might think of something that's too simple. They might think of something that's impossible for them to say. So it's not just thinking up what to say, it's thinking up something to say that is pitched at a level they can say, and will get the marks from the criteria for whatever stage of learning they're at. And that's what this is all about. It's about taking these building blocks of language. Don't think,
sorry, I couldn't be in the meeting today. It's such a shame.
Hello, there's a video of Jerome. It's not about what can I say, oh no I can't, or what can I say, oh that wasn't very good. It's about, here are the building blocks. I like, I love, I can, I can't, I have, I want to, I'm going to, I went, I decided, I was going to. And what can you make out of those building blocks? And you can say to people, when year 11 say, oh, I'm thinking, say, don't think, say the first thing the question's asking. If it's what do you like to do on holiday, you start with I like to go, and then you follow it up automatically with because I can. And then automatically somewhere there's lurking, but if then this happens, then I prefer that. And then the teacher might say, por ejemplo, for example, and they'll say, well, we went here, and I'll just raise an eyebrow, and they'll say, I was going to do this, but we decided to do that. It's one thing flows from one to another, and it gets rid of that thinking of what should I say. And also when you put up, for example, those 4 infinitives of go to the aquarium, see the fish, touch the fish, drop my phone, it's all laid out for you. It's ready there. You know, you're going to say, I like to go to the aquarium because I can see the fish. It's going to happen. It's designed to take away that situation of not knowing what to say or not thinking what to say.
And can I just jump in, because I've actually I mean, I don't know if everybody knows about Vincent's blog, which is fantastic. Who don't mind me plugging it? The Nice Man Who Teaches Languages, isn't it? It's really, really good. Now I read it. I started reading it a little while ago, and it works really, really well. our year 11s had their mocks yesterday, and I was just looking, because I just have a big pile of their writings here. They had their writing yesterday, and I've got, you know, this bullet point, votre opinion du shopping, and I've got just picked up one here. À mon avis, j'adore faire du shopping car c'est extrêmement divertissant. Cependant, quelquefois c'est trop cher. Malheureusement, ma mère pense que c'est plutôt odieux. It's a bit dramatic, but anyway, ce qui est très triste. But you can see, like, it works really, really well, and that's obviously a fantastic bullet point with loads of really good language, and you know, the pupils find it, like you say, really, really easy to. They're writing more than 90 words or 150 words, because it just gives them ideas, and they're getting in all the things they need to do. Opinions, negative opinions, third person, or, you know, first person plural, and yeah, it just works. It works so well.
I agree.
Yeah.
I've been using these little things after, you know, for quite a long time, and also after listening to Vincent. And I think what is great is it can be adaptable to every little context. I think that's absolutely key. So you can, and also it gives you extra points, Jesse say, because when you narrate, you straight away you get into the communication, it starts shooting up, and you can narrate in a very, very simple way. And if you practice in different ways all the time, it really sticks, and it's a little bit element of stickability. So I agree that it is a fantastic skill. Mm-hmm.
I hope that answers the question.
Can I just
a bit like...
say something about that as well? Yeah.
Of course.
Sorry. Yesterday was book day, and attendance builders to talk about La Tomatina, and then Now you're going to create your own. So another festival that you do, use the template, use really
Marguerite, we're really struggling to hear you because of your
word
connection. It's
sentences,
not.
but others they were really acting up that.
We cannot hear you, Margarita. It cuts off.
Can you hear me now?
No, it's cutting in and out,
Margarita.
Marguerite.
We can hear you a little bit, but yeah, hopefully she will be able.
I think it's Margarita's connection there's causing a few issues. Apologies, everyone's commenting. Thank you for letting us know. Esmeralda, have you got any other questions there? Jennifer's also joined us. Sorry, Jennifer, I didn't see you there before, so I was a bit late adding you back in.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Jennifer, and one of the comments that they were saying, I think it was Sylvia actually, how dictation actually is very good as well for listening skills. Okay, so what is your experience with that? Have you really seen that your students, not only the phonics, of course, comes, also get practice, but have you noticed that actually creates a really good foundation for listening, or not much difference? What is your experience? What are the benefits of doing the dictation, apart from the fact that they will be part of the new GCSE? But before that, obviously, when we didn't know that they were, it would be assessed.
Yeah, I think everything that we do anyway, linked with the speaking, will help with the, with the listening. But actually, it's really making the pupils think carefully about the language. What I've noticed, it's a lot teaching, obviously French and Spanish. It's a lot more difficult in French, especially because obviously in year 7 they do not have as much vocabulary like as your GCSE classes. So in French, with all the silent final consonants, with all of that, it's a lot. Well, it's more difficult. However, if we start quite simple, it's just to build that confidence. It's like everything, what Vincent was saying in some of the, of the comments, or when Greg was talking about the use of the target language. If we start really early, that's going to help our pupils in the long term, and it's what we want at the end of the day. And yes, there will always be, a new GCSE at some point, but that's not the reason. I mean, we've always done some dictation. We've always done like the running dictations and the things like that. It's just slightly adapting our practice to make sure that it's also going to help our pupils for the exam, but not only that, because at the end of the day, we're languages teachers because we want them to speak and use the language, and not only for the GCSE. But yeah, to answer your question, definitely it does help with the listening. However, I think it's a bit easier in Spanish than in French.
Yeah, following on from that, there's a question in the chat from Samir asking, what useful strategies do you have for getting pupils to remember not to pronounce those silent letters? So Vincent, I don't know if that was you going to...
I have got a top tip for dictation. It's not necessarily answering that question, but following on from Jennifer's presentation, where you've got, for example, gap fills for them to put the word in that they hear. Like you said with French, it's not just the phonics. It is a whole thing of understanding the sentence, understanding the word that is being said, and using the context. I mean, just with bar, that could be pig or it could be port. So the context is vital. And I think a top tip for this one is don't use gap fills straight away. Instead, give them the whole sentence, because when you've got a gap fill, it's a sentence with a word missing. So already they're struggling to, I can't read this sentence, there's a word. Give them the whole sentence and they're listening for a word that's changed. So, it might say, I went to the beach and I played in the sea. So instead of that, I went to the beach and I swam in the sea. So they've already got a word in there, so the sentence makes sense and they can digest it and understand it. And when they hear the new word, it fits into that framework, and you are supporting them to understand what's missing and what form it might take, rather than a blank, because a blank in a sentence, already you've made it hard to understand. So I've gone, before I do the the blanks in the sentence. I've gone with sentences that are full sentences, and when they listen to me speaking, I change a word and they identify which word's been changed and then write in the new word. And it just seems to work much easier like that, the cognitive load of having a sentence that works but something's been changed, as opposed to a sentence that's already got something missing and, oh, what do I need to put in this blank? It just works much better. And I think that's what I liked about the presentation, Jennifer, was that we can't just go straight to dictation. We've got to have little ways of people trying things out, what works, what doesn't work, and step by step to make it something that is possible and isn't just something we fail at, especially in French, like you said.
Could I also just quickly interject there? There's a technique I developed last year with my year 7s who really couldn't get to grips with the S on the end of words. I developed a gesture for any consonants that come that we don't pronounce at the end of French. I go, ça c'est une lettre invisible. So every time, I won't even have to like interject on it. They might say je dois, and I'll go, and then all the people sort of go back to them, and I'll go je dois. I'm like, there you go. So you develop these little humorous tricks to make sure they also don't feel super self-conscious, especially if they look and see that there's a bunch of words where letters may be easily mispronounced, and they're having a go at that oracy. You want to encourage them, but in a more humorous way. So that could also be a technique you could use.
That is great. That's really, I like gestures I have, because the children then start associating the gesture, what the actual meaning. One of the things as well, I would like you to suggest, following Vincent's suggestion about having whole sentences. For me, would be after the filling gaps, to do a filling gaps without gaps. That's very powerful as well. So they got the text and they got words that are missing, but don't tell them where the words are. So they need to listen to very carefully. And obviously, I'm doing dictation. They have to listen, and they have exactly where the gap will be, and then write the words. It's quite challenging, but it really makes them think about the context that Vincent was talking about and what words would go, or after, what things would actually make sense in what they got written. I think that's very powerful. Of course, I would do that normally after the filling gaps because it's much harder. So it's a little bit of a scaffolding activities you can get there, and they can see how words relate to other words. Just an idea.
To just add from what Lucy was saying, I love the idea of a gesture as well, for any, spoken activities, but also what, with the younger ones, if you've got a text on display and you want them to practice the reading aloud, something that could help as well is sometimes I use a picture of a little ghost next to the silent final letters. So it's just to remind them. And yes, all the time you remove that scaffolding, but we're talking a lot about helping the pupils to get there. So sometime on your text, on your PowerPoint, or when you write something just on the board, you might just have that little ghost just to remind the pupils that this is a silent letter.
Yeah. Also, a question for Lucy. That obviously I loved your idea of your scaffolding. For the reading. At which stage would you introduce reading comprehension questions in that scaffolded ladder? What is your advice?
Well, I think the scope of comprehension questions has now been expanded with tools such as ChatGPT, and so teachers having to think about it on their own. You could literally ask a tool like that to generate it. Often these texts that we find in textbooks or from worksheets or exam questions will be accompanied by questions that you can reformulate. I would say that I always use it in the appendix, but actually, if I want to build reading confidence, it's more about eliciting comprehension through immediate teacher feedback. So that sort of whole class questioning where students have had a chance to maybe dissect the text for 5 to 10 minutes, discuss it with one another, really examine the meaning of a word, the relation of that meaning to other words. And then I go, right, so from sentences 1 to 4, what do we learn? What category information do we learn about? Can you tell me some key words that, give evidence for that answer? They'll label those categories and they'll say, but doesn't that word and that word mean that they live here during the summer, but don't live there during the winter? And I'll say, oh, very good. Like, did anyone else pick up that inference? And they said, no, we don't understand. So I think the comprehension part of the reading confidence building is more powerful and more powerfully modeled through teacher interaction with their pupils. And then once you've built that confidence, I think you develop that sense of autonomy and kind of, again, self-determination and efficiency for students to then look at written questions. And then that means you can briefly model actually how the meaning that they've inferred from the text relates to what the questions are asking. And say, for example, it's a multiple choice or a true, false, not mentioned. If I've gotten the students to number the sentences and do their written summaries, I'll then go, right, look at the questions and see if there are any keywords that you remember seeing or the category information you remember seeing in your sentence, and put the number of the sentence which you need to refer back to. So there's a more sort of exam-based technique you could apply. But if you're really wanting to build students' confidence in literacy, I think the questioning and the comprehension comes as part of your questioning and sort of sequence of learning through that live modeling and teacher questioning as well.
I love that. I think that's, it makes complete sense. So it's rather than, I think it's about getting the idea that reading shouldn't just be a text, so you can learn from the skill of reading, and you can get quite a lot of rich conversations as well.
And actually, to add to that, I think, as I said before, the questions that sometimes are paired with these texts limit the scope of comprehension for these students, so that it's not encouraging them to pull at the thread and make actually inferences that go beyond that text. And if it is inquiry-based learning, you want to feel that all levels of responses are welcome in that classroom. It's not just it's because even if the question is fairly open in what it's eliciting in terms of comprehension, it actually is fairly closed, because it says, well, you've got those 6 marks for comprehension, that there's no more information that we can deduce from that text.
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One question for you, Connor. I really love the way you're actually thinking about phonics, isn't it? And the pronunciation and how everything goes. How does that embed with the normal lessons? Do you do that like a lesson on phonics per week, or do you how do you do your normal lessons, and how do you embed the pronunciation without having to just do phonics on its own, or how do you embed it? Negative,
Well, I think we sort of saying we changed things this year. I think we used to do a phonics lesson towards maybe the start of the year, and we found that in that phonics lesson there was so much that pupils couldn't take it all in, and then it was so isolated that they then, well, again, couldn't take it all in. They didn't retain it, and so we don't now do a standalone phonics lesson. In every lesson there is phonics, but it literally takes, I think I said 5 minutes, probably not even 5 minutes. Usually we have, at the start of the lesson, we have sort of a starter, whatever you might call it, a do now, and then shortly after that, we have a slide with, in fact, I'm just looking here. I wonder if I can very quickly. Oh, I've done the wrong thing. I wonder if I could just very quickly. Oh, I'm messing things up. I'm trying to multitask. Share a lesson that I taught. Just one. I taught yesterday, for example. The best
do I have
way.
time for that, Hannah?
Yeah. No,
It's not the whole lesson, but I'll show you as a quick example. Hopefully, this is one that will that'll work. So it's just uploading at the moment, but we just take 2 minutes after the first activity to be like, here's a sound, let's practice it. And then we do that, and we usually, like I said, have 2 lessons in the week. I'm just trying to share this one, this with la télé, so you can see this was what we started off with, just something simple at the start, whatever you might use to start your lesson. This just happened to be translation, and then, it's messed up the font, it looks all over the place. It normally looks, much clearer than that, but you can see the idea where we do this. We do our start, and then settles the pupils. We do this, and then we do the phonétique de la semaine, which ties into what we're looking at, TV, because they're going to say "regarde" all the time. We've met "je le trouve," and it's going to come up all the time in this, and so we it's just usually the second and the third slide will be this, and then the third slide practices with some words that they know, some words that they don't know, had a bit of fun with crapaud, but we do that for our we do that as I guess the second thing in every lesson for about 2 minutes. And the other thing on that is, I don't know if you noticed, but these they sort of, the words get a little bit more difficult as they go through, these 6 words, and they also integrate other sounds that we've met earlier in the year. So a lot of them have silent final consonant, we have a wa, and we have o towards the end. We've got in regard. We just take 2 minutes after the starter and do it in every lesson.
That's brilliant. And I liked it as well how you made the references to what you are teaching at the time, because what I found sometimes, is that you do phonics completely in isolation, sometimes so much in isolation, and then it's not revisited later on it's embedded in the way that we normally work in the lessons. So it loses the value. It's a little bit like doing grammar with son. It's like, okay, let's conjugate. They can conjugate, but then they cannot put it in a sentence and they write infinitive. So that's what I wanted to ask you. What is your experience? So you answered really well.
And because it ties into the lesson, people then get loads of practice with it. Obviously, we do this sort of what some people call deliberate practice. You see that slide, the attention slide. But then because during that lesson, they're saying and hearing regard all the time, they're getting so much practice, they're getting further practice with it. And because it ties into the lesson, it's not just 2 minutes by itself. It's 2 minutes to focus on it, but then it comes up again and again and again, and they really internalize it. And that's sort of the reasoning and the intention behind it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Has anybody got anything else to add before we finish the Q&A session? We're really fortunate. Jerome, even though he's teaching, has recorded his presentation for 15 minutes for us. So I do want to play that before we leave. Has anybody got anything to add before I play that video? No?
I've very quickly got a fun fact, which is that there's somebody that I've seen commenting in the chat. I won't embarrass them, but somebody I went to school with who's in my French and German lessons all the way through secondary school, who's also here watching, which is quite an interesting coincidence. So there you go.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you very much, all of you. And thank you for giving up your Saturday morning to present and all the time that's gone into preparing your resources, meeting with us before the event this morning to make sure that all the technical side of things work. And we've had some technical difficulties today, but hopefully we've overcome them and it's all gone well. So thank you very much to all of you. And as a reminder, these events wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, Language Nut, and we are very grateful to them for sponsoring our events and thank them for their time. And you've got the information to join Language Nut there going across the bottom of the screen. I have posted in the comment section the link to sign up on the 20th of May. I've also just sent it out to all of our presenters as well, if any of them would like to come back. And Adam is going to put that on Twitter shortly to share it with everybody. It would be brilliant to hear from lots of different voices. You can present on any topic, any resource. The idea of a Teachmeet is that they are resources and lesson ideas that teachers can take away and use in their classroom in the coming week when they are doing their planning. And our keynote speakers are speakers who present on the bigger ideas in MFL teaching there as well. Now, it's over to me for the tech side of things, and this could go drastically wrong. I'm going to try uploading Jerome's video. As we said earlier on, Jerome is head of French, and he was going to talk to us about immersive reader in Microsoft Teams. And I know this is something that I'm really interested about. So I'm going to try and play his video. Esmeralda, if you could tell me if it works, please. I'm hoping it's going to work. So if I go to video, that should work. Is it loading?
Sorry, I couldn't be in a meeting today. It's such a shame because obviously I wanted to be there and I had some technical issues. I'm at school and the Wi-Fi has been playing really a lot of tricks. So I'll show you quickly. Talked about Reading Progress, Reading Coach, which are amazing tools in Microsoft Teams. Also, I have a little word about Immersive Reader, which I think is also a magnificent tool to be using in the language classroom. Reading Coach, Reading Progress is great, obviously to check on what your children have been working on and things like that, and to see that with all the phonics you have done and the topic you've been working on, and they master all of these sounds that you want them to know. Let's have a quick demo and see how it works. So you obviously need to be part of the Microsoft ecosystem to have access to this. But, why not have a go if you don't have it already? So you need to be going into assignments, and I need to create a new assignment. I'm going to call it demo to go faster. Then I need to attach. You can see I've got different things. So if you're creating a task, you add your documents, but here it's reading progress we're interested in. I remember, I think probably Margareta Mortimer's done a beautiful demo of that too. I just keep plowing and show you what the new stuff is. So import a document. I'm going to upload it from my device. Okay, you can see right straight away he picked up that it was a French document. This is a document that actually I created on ChatGPT. Surprise, surprise. Again, I'm a big fan of EPI, Gianfranco Conti's method. Everybody's got their own ways of teaching and stuff like that. I think this works really, really well for me. So that's the way I'll roll. But you know, whatever you like, whatever works for you. And we had a sentence builders on all these things, and we went through all of the topics, all of the chunks, and so on and so forth, and all the sounds at the beginning of the sessions. So they were pretty familiar with all of these sounds, and I wanted to check that they were actually doing all right. So my text is in. The genre and number of items is unlimited. I think it's better that way. No limit for time. Pronunciation sensitivity, I will leave it to default. You can make it really picky if you wanted to, or less sensitive if you wanted to. It's up to you. Default is good. And you don't really need to have the video. I think for the shy children, it's always great not to put a video, require the video. And Really Coach needs to be on. So let's click on next and create the assignment. Done. And now you assign it. Nice and easy, and the pupils you're being assigning to will be receiving this. I'll show you quickly how this looks like on the student side and see how things will be working for them. Student view, click on this, and you can have the camera or not. They started off and they'll be reading the text. Okay, it's going to be recording. Je m'appelle Benjamin, blah blah blah. You keep going and you click I'm done when it's finished. Okay, get off the screen. Now what I want to do is I just show you what the result looks like. Back, and I go on past due, and I go on to, how about this one? Okay, you can see that you have some result. You have the text here recorded. So if you want to mark yourself, you can actually mark yourself instead of letting the machine do it, because you think maybe the machine has not done such a good job. You can see there's been 1 mispronunciation here, and there's been 6 omissions in the text for some reason. So I don't know. But here, you can see that the computer picked up some words, and that's Reading Coach, and he picked up 5 words that the pupil will have to be reading. Okay, so and you can see what tools the tools they have been using. If they listen to the word first, or if I listened and had a look at the picture because they didn't know what he meant. So that's really good, and they're going to be practicing these words here. The great stuff also there is you have all the insights on the reading progress for all the ones that you have done before. And so if you click on that, you have all of the stats that you want to have with all the accuracy and omissions and stuff, which is great for to see to check the progress. There's only one student here, but you see you can have 10, 12, 25, 30. Okay, you can have all of these. And what it's great also is that the computer picks up all of the words which have been picked up, and you can see the bigger they are, it means the more time they came up, like a word cloud, obviously. And if you click on that button here, it will be creating an assignment on all the words which have been mispronounced, which I think is pretty amazing. So fair play to Reading Progress and Reading Coach for all this exciting stuff here.
Okay, I'm just going to show you a quick example of what Immersive Reader is. Instead of showing you on a PowerPoint, it's much easier. So here I am. I'm on Word Online, but obviously you can do it onto your normal computer. It's usually a bit better online if you are using a Mac. On the Mac, the Immersive Reader is a little bit funny, but anyway. So you go into View, then you click on Immersive Reader. I apologize also, I've got COVID, so I've got a bit of a massive cold at the moment. So you can see that here, you have your text in Spanish, so I've changed it and got text in Spanish. Here you can change the text preference. So you can change the size, increase the spacing between the words if you wanted to. So it could be like this, but it's always better. More space. You can change the font. If you're teaching little ones, it's always good to have some Comic Sans or something like that. And if you have some dyslexics, people who've got issues with reading, you can change the background color. Okay, that's really, really handy. Then, if you wanted to work on certain parts of the speech here, you wanted to highlight the nouns, or the verbs, or the adjectives, or the adverbs, okay, you can have that. And if you want to show the label, what is what, you have this. It could be a little bit confusing if you have too many colors on. So just let's keep on to the verbs, for example. Okay, and I can show the label, but it's just just don't have to do that. Then you can turn into syllables if you wanted to. Okay, when you're reading your Elena, it's syllable if you wanted to. And also, if you go here, you can have a line focus. Therefore, if you click on this, when the person is going to be reading the text, you just will have the line, so people are not confused about whatever you see there. You don't have to have it, but it could be quite useful for some people. Picture dictionary is on, which means that technically if I go into one of the words, like rojo, it's going to show me what it is. Okay, the same thing for gafas, and I have the pronunciation. I have
gafas.
I have the pronunciation. I don't have the little drawing, so it doesn't really matter. Hermano. Okay, it's quite cool to have this, isn't it? It's quite nice. Then, once we have done that, you can actually play the text. So you have several possibilities. You can put the speed a little bit down. It could be read by a female, by a male, whatever is your preference. I usually put it here because obviously it can quite fast. For the people who are struggling a little bit, I will put it at the very end, but here usually is quite a good one. So let's have a listen.
Uso gafas. Vivo en un apartamento en el centro de Barcelona, una ciudad en la costa este de España.
Okay, that's good. It's a very lovely accent, and obviously you can listen and read in your mind, in your head at the same time, and practice the pronunciation. So it's actually quite a good thing to do. Okay, what is really, really cool also, if you go to Microsoft Edge, you can go onto different websites. Sorry about all the ads you have on the side. More exciting. You can, if you go in the bar here, you have this little icon which is going to read the text to you. So it's going to be reading it in French. So that's pretty amazing. Click
Service Le Monde. Les ateliers du monde. Mémorable.
So if you go and
Monde
highlight.
avec AFP. À la Berlinale, est un documentaire qui a remporté l'Ours d'Or du Festival du film de Berlin.
Okay, so if you click on the page and you are on that page, it's actually going to be reading the text for you, which is pretty amazing. You can also go, you can see you have the immersive reader icon. So if you do that, you will have this also as an immersive reader. So if you have exactly the same things happening, you can read it aloud for you. You got text preferences, exactly the same stuff that we have seen before, grammar tools, reading preferences, line focus, and picture dictionary, and you can even translate all of the text into English, but that's not really the point here. We're just trying to have this. So I suppose these type of articles are for higher level, but if you've got something which is aimed at the right age with the right vocab and stuff like that, could be very, very useful to do so. So you have now a good idea what immersive reader is, and how you can use it maybe in class for many things, and to help people reading some text, or to have a good idea what the pronunciation is, as learning on the side for them, maybe do something at home and things like that. But another thing that you can add to that, if you are not using Teams and you still want to be using Reading Coach and work on the pronunciation and things like that, so You have your text already in Spanish, and if you click here, you can see you have your reading coach button. It's grey at the moment. We're going to sort it out in a sec. So choose your language. Obviously, this is in Spanish. You don't want to change the language. You want to keep it in Spanish. So I'm going to put it into Spanish. You obviously Latin American, so depending which one you're doing. Spanish Spain for me there. By word, and we don't want to change the, well, you can change the whole document. It doesn't, yeah, you have to change the whole document, even though it's not going to change anything. So this way reading coach is ready to go and ready to roll. Okay, so now if I put this on, you can see that the icon has changed into green, and we will be ready to rumble and do exactly the same things that we have been doing before, i.e. reading the text and going for it. Okay, so I'm going to be reading the text in a second, and we'll be back to the video to see how well I have done. Right, you can see that I read my text and I've got 96% accuracy. Okay, I spent 44 seconds on that. The rate is 152 words per minute, not too bad. And it identified 5 words that I need to practice. So I'm going to see what words.
Practice makes progress. Select any word to keep growing your skills.
Okay, and exactly that we have done before. We just go and practice the words.
When you're ready, press the microphone and read the word out loud.
It's always a good idea to actually know how they would like you to pronounce it first.
Centro.
And have a go. Centro.
Your effort is showing.
Okay, so
Great
happy with my
reading.
pronunciation. So I've got a green star, happy days, and I can keep going and pronounce all of the words that I have done at the beginning. I'm not going to do that now. If I click on, no, I'm done. You still have this. So obviously you're not in Teams. Because you're not in Teams, you won't have as many insight as you should. What you should be asking the children to do, the pupils to do, is take a screenshot of this if you're not using Teams. This way you have a record on how well they have done, and maybe it could be taking a screenshot of the words that they have to pronounce too. So if you go back there again, practice words.
Next step, practice.
You can have an
Select
idea
any word
of
to
what
keep
words
building your
they have
skills.
not been reading. So maybe 2 screenshots that you can save somewhere in a Wakelet, for example, or something like that. So you know exactly where they are.
I'm hoping I'm back on there. That was a fantastic video from Jerome giving us step-by-step instructions there, and I think there's lots of information and really useful to be able to go back to that video as well. So thank you, Jerome, for taking the time to record that video, and again, apologies for the technical issues earlier on. And that is it. 3 hours nearly. We're nearly at 3 hours, not quite. I just want to mention our sponsors again, Language Nut, as I've said a couple of times throughout the event, and the information is going across the screen at the bottom. It wouldn't be possible to host these events free of charge without our fantastic sponsors, and we are very grateful to Language Nut for sponsoring our event once again. I'd also like to say thank you to our wonderful team, Esmeralda and Adam, who have helped me prepare for this event. They've done loads of work behind the scenes. Esmeralda for presenting alongside me today as well, and Adam for running all the technical side of things in the background and for presenting today, even though you're not well, and we hope you recover quickly. And the final thanks, of course, is to our presenters. We've had a fantastic variety of speakers who've all given up their time, taken time to create their presentations, taken time to liaise with us and send the relevant information over to us in advance. So we are very grateful, and thank you to every one of you watching online, whether you've joined us at various points during the event or whether you've watched the whole webinar. The recording will be available on the link that you signed up via, and also on the Teachmeet Icons website. And as we've already said, the resources will also be uploaded to the TES page shortly as well. It's been a fab morning. I hope you've really enjoyed it. It would be brilliant to hear your takeaways on Twitter and continue the conversation. I think that was something I really enjoyed the last webinar. The conversation continues, so it'd be fantastic to hear how you've used resources and ideas from our presenters, and great if you could tag them in on Twitter following the event. And thank you. Esmeralda, have you got anything to add there that I've forgotten to say?
No, yes, thank you. And I just would say, just I would love to encourage everyone to join us and to apply to be a speaker next time. I think this, as you can see, this is about teachers for teachers. And if you go like 5-minute idea, something very short that's really working for you, we want to hear from you. You don't need to have any speaking experience whatsoever. So please come and join us, because I think it's just great to build up the community.
Yeah, thank you very much. I can see the comments going there. Thank you to all of you for everything, and it would be great to hear how you're using the resources.
Brilliant. Okay.